Chapter 240. In the middle of the long metal passageway stood a handsome young man. He was wearing a simple black striped sportswear. His clothes couldn't be more ordinary, but it was too abnormal for someone wearing such clothes to appear in this place. Malwan calmed down and showed a polite smile. Mr. Du wants to visit our Cypress Star. I could be a guide, but this place is not a scenic spot. Duomo looked unusually calm and nodded. I know. Malwan frowned and narrowed his eyes into a line. So, what is Mr. Du's intention for coming here? This place was confidential. Ordinary people could not enter at all. Even if Duomo was not an ordinary person, his purpose for coming here was not simple. Duomo said, I have no other intention. I came here mainly because Captain Mao is here. Oh, if Mr. Du wants to find me, you can directly contact me through the wristband. Why come down personally? Malwan quietly operated his origin energy. He was not sure whether Duomo knew about the reverse source crystal, so he had to pretend that he did not know. Duomo's face suddenly sank. Captain Mao, I came to ask you about something. What is it? Malwan was secretly nervous. Duomo said in a deep voice, 3 months ago, did you go to Nebula KV 3545? Unexpectedly, it was this question. Malwan's nervous nerves relaxed a lot. Yes, I went there. Duomo continued. Did you go to the Green Arrow Corps base on planet KV 303? Seeing that his face was not good, Malwan raised his vigilance. Mr. Du, what does this have to do with you? Duomo said, you just need to answer whether you went there or not. Malwan's face sank. Mr. Du, I respectfully call you Mr. Du because you are from Starlight University, but you should know what kind of place Cypress Star is. There are many things that can't be said. Duomo coldly snorted. Can't be said? You mean you have been there, right? You dare to do it, but don't dare to admit it? Malwan's face sank and did not answer. Duomo said, I heard that the head of the 2nd Regiment, Mao Zhan, is your big brother. He has a strange hobby. He likes to eat the brains of children and the placenta of women. Is that so? Malwan finally understood why this kid had come. He glared at him and roared. This is none of your business. You better mind your own business. Duomo stared at him. Where are these people now? Seeing that he was so stubborn, Malwan was also annoyed. What does it have to do with you? Where is it? If you have the ability, go and find it yourself. Little brat, don't pretend to be profound in front of me. F***CK off, scram to the side. With his roar, 7 or 8 mercenaries beside him immediately raised their energy guns and aimed at Duomo. Duomo said coldly, you know my identity and you still dare to attack me? So what if I know? Wasn't he just a student from Starlight University? Do you think I'm a coward? Beat him up. Malwan roared. Swish, swish, swish. So. All kinds of energy guns immediately sprayed out colorful bullets that blotted out the sky and covered the ground toward the entrance of the tunnel. In an instant, they formed a light pupil that blocked the entrance of the tunnel. Then, they exploded like firecrackers. Malwan snorted disdainfully. You idiot, trying to act cool in front of me. King. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly felt something strange above his head. Before he could turn his head, Duomo's figure had already descended from the sky. Before he landed, he swept his leg out. Similarly, there was a series of crackling sounds. 7 or 8 mercenaries immediately lost their weapons and were sent flying. The guns that fell out of their hands smashed into the light screens of the control consoles and extinguished a large portion of them. The power room was immediately in chaos. The workers covered their heads and scattered in all directions. Malwan was a little surprised. Good kid, I didn't expect you to have some skills. His reaction wasn't slow either. Just as Duomo stood still, he suddenly jumped half a meter into the air and sent a karate chop straight at Duomo's head. Malwan's seemingly strange movement actually contained a deeper meaning. The moment Duomo used transient steps, he knew that his opponent was a light speed user without a doubt. The strength of a light element warrior lay in their speed and the element of surprise. His karate chop was just a cover. The real killing move hidden behind, it was his elbow punch that changed from a knife to an elbow. He also had various options after landing because as long as Duomo moved away, he would be at a disadvantage. Mao Wan could chase after Du Mo and hit him with all kinds of moves. This mercenary leader who had been killing and robbing for years was indeed very experienced in actual combat. However, he couldn't use any of the moves he imagined. Du Mo didn't dodge at all. Instead, he met Mao Wan's karate chop head-on and raised his right elbow to hit Mao Wan's right wrist. If Ding Meng was present, he would probably be shocked too. Du Mo's style was very similar to his, head-on confrontation. Moreover, Du Mo's attack this time was much fiercer than the one in the mining area. Mao Wan's karate chop felt like it had hit an alloy steel plate and was quickly rebounded. With a muffled bang, the air seemed to have ruptured. In the midst of the rupture, Mao Wan's huge body also flew out. He was flying towards the entrance of the tunnel. Before he could land, Du Mo's figure appeared behind him like a ghost and hit the back of his head with another bang. This time, it was different because Mao Wan was directly beaten to the ground like a dead dog. The tempered tables and chairs in the resting area were all smashed out of shape. Du Mo didn't stop. His figure paused for a moment, and then with a swish, 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 more than 10 phantoms appeared. His afterimage spread out in all directions in an incredible way. 2 seconds later, more than 10 staff members in the power room all fell to the ground with a thump, thump, thump sound. Almost everyone was clutching their chests as they fell on their backs. Their ribs were all shattered, and they were in so much pain that they couldn't get up. They had to thank Du Mo for being merciful and not deliberately taking their lives. At this time, Mao Wan awkwardly crawled out from a pile of tables and chairs. He was so angry that his guts were about to explode. Puffed. Mao Wan lowered his head and spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm. "You dog, I misjudged you. I didn't expect you to act so well before. I didn't know you were a high-level warrior. Go to hell." With a roar, he charged forward like a tank. This wasn't a simple collision. Just like before, he also jumped up with a small step. However, when his foot landed on the ground, there was a slight tremor. Then, as he ran, he made an even bigger step. Moreover, his sprint also had a strange change in direction. Finally, he used his origin ability to step towards Du Mo. It could be said that he was stepping and colliding at the same time. Boom! A 3-meter deep hole appeared under Du Mo's feet. Mao Wan's shoulder collided with Du Mo's chest. This was the result of the combination of the thermodynamic systems, Ash's resonance, and Gale Flash Strike. Mao Wan had trained hard for 5 years on this move, let alone a person. He could even break open this passage's alloy door in an instant. Unfortunately, Du Mo's strength was far beyond his imagination. When his shoulder collided with Du Mo's chest, Du Mo's entire body seemed to have turned into air. He directly passed through Du Mo's mirror image. With a boom, he sent the control panel, which was half the height of a person, flying. The control panel then smashed into the metal surface of the power furnace and turned into a puff of green smoke. Mao Wan suddenly stopped, twisted his body, staggered, and punched back with both hands. Sure enough, Du Mo's real body was right behind him. This punch of his was also filled with strength. It was a solid combination of penetrating force and inching force. However, this Du Mo's actual combat experience was also frighteningly rich. He seemed to have accurately calculated the power of Mao Wan's punch. When the wind of the punch arrived, he leaned back, and the punch, together with the energy, rushed over the tip of his nose. His palms formed an X shape and firmly clamped Mao Wan's right wrist. Mao Wan almost didn't hesitate. His right leg swept towards Du Mo's lower body. However, Du Mo countered with an even more ingenious move. His left calf was placed on his right knee, and his left knee blocked the center of Mao Wan's ankle. It looked like Mao Wan had used his right leg to hit Du Mo's knee. Du Mo's movement was very similar to the posture of lying down and praying to Buddha. Not only did he grasp the timing perfectly, but his body was also indescribably elegant. At first glance, it was obvious that he had been taught by a famous master. Mao Wan could be considered to have missed 3 times in a row. Of course, there wouldn't be a 4th time. A pure white and dazzling brilliance suddenly flashed, like a stunning meteor flying in the night sky. With a chi sound, blood spurted out like an arrow, and condensed into a red mist in the air that didn't disperse. Mao Wan's scream could be heard in one word. He had never suffered such intense pain before because his right fist was gone. His fist and wrist had been completely separated, and his wrist was still spurting blood. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that Dumo's arm seemed to be wearing a layer of black boxing gloves. An unknown device had appeared on the back of his wrist. It seemed to be a black metal block, and a sharp blade popped out from the metal block. It looked like a sword, but it wasn't a sword, and it looked like a knife, but it wasn't a knife. The sharp blade made a cha-cha-cha sound as it rotated, and it actually transformed into the shape of a cross. Mao Wan's hand was forcibly broken by this thing. To be able to break the wrist of a high-level heat warrior, there was no doubt that this was a sharp weapon among cold weapons. Du Mo clenched his fist, and the cross made a cha-cha-cha sound as it merged into a shiny short sword, but looked more like a multi-edged military knife. Mao Wan had killed a lot of people, and he knew what it meant when a military knife was designed to be a prism with grooves. It was easier to pull it out after piercing into a person's body. In other words, this was a weapon specially designed to kill people. It would be a lie to say that he was not afraid, especially when he saw Du Mo's cold face. This face had not completely shed the youthfulness of a young man, and it was precisely because of this that he was afraid. This Du Mo looked to be only 25 or 26 years old, but he actually had the strength of a war elder. He was so young, and he was a student of Starlight University. Those so-called proud sons of heaven of the Holy Grail Federation were precisely this kind of people. However, Mao Wan was also a stubborn person. He gritted his teeth and said, I'll F***CKU. You didn't stay in the Holy Grail Federation and came to this remote Cypress star to meddle in other people's business. You want to eat shit? With a cha sound, Du Mo, who was squatting down, mercilessly chopped at his elbow joint, nailing his entire right arm to the steel plate. Mao Wan was in so much pain that he was like a prawn, his four limbs desperately flailing and twisting. Du Mo stared at him and said coldly, "You'd better be more polite when talking to me." Chapter 241. Mao Wan could not answer Du Mo at all. He was lucky that the pain did not make him faint. After he struggled for a long time, Du Mo regained his composure. Tell me, was it Hu Biao's team that massacred the tens of thousands of refugees on planet KV-303? Mao Wan laughed crazily. So what if it wasn't? There was another thud. The sharp blade cut into his shoulder blade, nailing him to the ground. However, Mao Wan was numb from the pain. He spat a mouthful of blood on Du Mo's face. Ha 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 ha, I won't tell you. I'll let you guess as much as you want. How about that? You can't do anything to me. I've swallowed a few human brains and placentas. Let me tell you, they tasted very good. TCH, his voice was suddenly cut off. His eyes popped out like a dead fish's because Du Mo had cut off his head. The transformation device on the boxing glove was activated again. The bayonet turned into a cross-shaped blade and spun rapidly. Like an electric fan, it ground Mao Wan's brain into powder. All the blood, bones, and brain matter sprayed on Du Mo's face, making his face look ferocious and terrifying. However, his face was not looking good. Only then did he realize that there was an extra figure at the entrance of the passage. He did not even notice it. Ding Meng looked at him silently. His tone was calm, but also very emotional. It was Hu Biao's team. I've already investigated it. Du Mo's nerves relaxed slightly. He slowly stood up. What about the women and children who were captured? This time, Ding Meng was silent for a long time before he spoke. His voice was very low. None of them survived. Du Mo said sternly. None of them survived? Ding Meng said expressionlessly. I didn't sense any of them along the way. Du Mo stared at him. I've been wondering. You're so skilled, and you hid your identity. It's impossible that you came here just to be a coolie. What about you? Ding Meng stared at him. Du Mo refused to answer. Ding Meng sighed. Do you know why I'm sure that none of them survived? Du Mo said, Speak. Ding Meng said, I lived with them for a while. As long as it's their aura, I can sense it. Du Mo was surprised. So that's why you're here. Ding Meng said, I think so too. Dumo's expression finally softened. I'm not a simple person, but before I came here, I promised my teacher that if I can't get justice for those innocent people, then I'm not worthy to be an origin ability user. Ding Ming asked, "Is your mentor okay with you coming to Bogger Star like this?" Dumo showed an impassioned expression. He's definitely worried, but he also said that if I can't even deal with this group of pirates, then I don't need to go back. If I can't even complete this little bit of training, then I might as well die here so that I won't embarrass him in the future. His Chinibu look was very confident, and the words he said were a little arrogant, but for some reason, Ding Ming just couldn't laugh. Instead, he felt a little warm in his chest. Some people met because they were the same kind of people, and some people met because they had the same goal. Therefore, people who walked together would not have any hostility between them, only a feeling of knowing each other. Sure enough, Dumo put away his weapon with a kacha sound and looked at Ding Ming. "You were commissioned by the Green Arrow Corps." Ding Ming was silent, then said, "You're wrong." Dumo said, "Oh." Ding Ming said, "It's not a commission. I came here on my own accord. Of course, you can treat me as a member of the Green Arrow Corps. I've said it before, I'm not your enemy. I've only come here for one thing, and that's to do what you just did." The faces of Salman, Yuliang, Ah Qiao, and Xiao Shanzi suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. As for what exactly I'm going to do, even I don't know. If I have to describe it, then there's only one sentence: fight for those who can't fight. This time, Dumo revealed a surprised expression. "Salman invited you here?" Ding Ming was also slightly surprised. "He didn't invite me. There's no need to invite friends." Dumo let out a long breath, and his expression seemed a little excited. "Uncle Salman and my father used to be friends when they were still origin ability users. They applied for the academy at the same time. My father often mentioned him and admired him very much." Ding Ming nodded. "So you also came to Baga Planet?" Dumo said seriously. "He didn't ask me to come here. I came here on my own accord. The Holy Grail Federation can choose not to react to this matter, but as an origin ability user of the Holy Grail Federation, I can't turn a blind eye to this matter. No matter what other people think of me, I can't remain indifferent." Ding Ming smiled. "You're not bad." At this time, Dumo stretched out a hand. With an extremely sincere expression on his face, he introduced himself seriously. "Dumo, Holy Grail Federation's Blue Moon Planet, Blue Pole Star City's Starlight University, top student, beginner light speed type, War Venerable." Ding Ming also slowly stretched out his right hand and looked at him seriously. "Ding Ming, interstellar refugee." Dumo was shocked. The Ding Ming who turned the Celestial Wolf Corps' Meteor City into a mess? That's me. When he said this, Ding Ming removed the disguise of Thousand Shadows and revealed his true appearance. Dumo's mouth suddenly opened wide. "You," Ding Ming smiled and said, "you don't think I'm him?" Dumo shook his head. It was hard to tell whether he was envious or jealous. "I didn't expect you to be so young." Ding Ming said, "You don't look old either." Dumo revealed a bitter smile. "That's different." Interstellar refugee, Sai. He was an expert and had fought with Ding Ming before. He knew that Ding Ming was far stronger than him. He was like Chu Shaoqing and the others in the past. He was usually regarded as a genius and a future star of the Federation. However, a freak like Ding Ming was actually an interstellar refugee. This was truly a pity. Ding Ming calmly removed the suitcase from Mao Wan's body and put it into his backpack. "Don't sigh. I've been to school before. Outer space is different from school." "Why is it different?" Dumo did not understand. Ding Ming sighed. "Sometimes, you can't be as soft-hearted as you when it comes to seeking justice. Although you're quite strong, killing is a different matter." Dumo didn't need to ask why, because the entire engine room suddenly flashed red. Clearly, the alarm had been triggered. He sensed a little. It turned out that among the group of staff members that he had knocked down with Afterimage, there were still people who had not completely lost their ability to move. A young woman leaned weakly against a control panel, but her left hand seemed to have pressed a hidden red square onto the platform. That was clearly a mechanical alarm. This was not caused by Dumo's carelessness, but because his previous attack had been flawed. To put it bluntly, it was because his martial arts had not been perfected, and his control of his power had not reached a precise level. However, now was not the time to think about these problems. Dumo's reaction was still very fast. In a few strides, he rushed back to the reactor and pressed a series of buttons on the control panel. Half a minute later, Chu Zhongyu, who was still in Su Mengqing's room on the 26th floor of Building 1, suddenly saw darkness. All the lights in the room went out. "What's going on?" Chu Zhongyu immediately stood up. Elon turned off the illusion on the crystal glass and looked outside. "Miss Su, the power supply system here seems to have been interrupted." Su Mengqing sat on the sofa without any reaction. She did not seem surprised. However, Chu Zhongyu could not sit still. A disdainful sneer appeared on his face. He was a VIP invited by Lu Ming. "Is this how you treat a VIP? At a critical moment, you gave me a power outage. What's the point of playing in the dark? What's the point of playing?" In fact, there was no need for him to doubt it. At this time, a large number of mercenaries had gathered in the circular plaza. Lu Ming, Guan Bai, Mao Zhan, and Hu Biao led everyone to look at the first floor of Building 3. The alarm had been issued from the underground engine room. There was only one possibility, and that was that there was an accident with the reverse source crystal. Hu Biao was directing everyone. "Watch all the exits, especially the first floor of Building 3. Prepare snipers at the other exits. As long as it's not someone from our group, even if it's a mosquito, kill it." Guan Bai was watching the scene from an hour ago on her wrist device. Ding Ming and Jiang Mao were walking side by side to the first floor of Building 3 in the plaza. Lu Ming's face looked very cold. Either there was something wrong with this wild wolf, or there was something wrong with Jiang Mao. Of course, the possibility of the latter was very small. After all, Jiang Mao was fourth child Chu's man. It was impossible for Haitian Group to play such a dirty trick on the Extreme Thief Corps. Thinking of this, Lu Ming asked in a low voice, "Is there a problem with the system or the power supply has been cut off?" Guan Bai immediately replied, "The system has been turned off. All the real-time images can't be seen. Mao Zhan can't be contacted either." Lu Ming decisively ordered, "Go down and see what's going on." "I'll go." Mao Zhan's sturdy figure was the first to walk out of the crowd. Lu Ming said, "Don't worry about anything else. Make sure the thing is safe first." "Understood." After saying this, Mao Zhan quickly walked to Building 3. He dared to go down alone because he had the strength of a war venerable. No matter what was going on down there, no one could hurt him. As long as he was fine, he could ensure that the inverse source crystal would not be out of the control of the Extreme Pirate Corps. The rest area on the third floor of the underground control center was like a neatly arranged and beautifully decorated canteen. In the center, there were rows of orange dining tables for 4 people, surrounded by electronic screens. There were also a few simple game machines and claw machines in the corner. Obviously, this was a place where the staff usually ate and played. When Mao Zhan walked down, he couldn't believe his eyes. In the center of the canteen, there was a table full of soup and drinks. A strange guy was sitting there eating and drinking. Looking at the way he even licked the plate clean, it seemed that this person had not eaten for a year and a half. Mao Zhan suddenly calmed down and looked at the other party carefully. Ding Ming was eating happily. He poured a large bowl of noodles into his mouth and chewed. As he chewed, he stuffed chicken legs into his mouth. "Ha, this place is really good. There's so much to eat." Mao Zhan also smiled. "It's really good. There's so much food that I can't finish it." Ding Ming was amused. Come, let's eat together." Mao Zhan didn't make any trouble. He walked straight forward and sat down opposite Ding Ming. Chapter 242. Mao Zhan was nearly 2 meters tall, and his body shape was simply that of a giant. He sat opposite Ding Ming, like a lion eyeing a little mouse that was stealing food. Since the mouse had been found, he was not worried that the mouse would run away. "Brother, you have a good appetite. How can you eat all this?" Mao Zhan said sarcastically. The food on the table had only been processed on the outside and looked like normal food, but in reality, it was all liquid food. It was usually provided to ordinary staff during interstellar travel when resources were lacking. As for the taste, there was no taste to speak of, but Ding Ming ate it with relish as if she was eating dragon liver and phoenix marrow. Then what should I eat? Ding Ming raised his head and looked at him with a faint smile. A woman's placenta or a child's brain? Mao Zhan's smile immediately disappeared and was replaced by a more vigilant look. Ding Ming said, "You actually know me." Mao Zhan snorted disdainfully. "You're just a girl, and you can only deal with girls like Yin Jia." Ding Ming sighed, put down the plate in his hand, and murmured, "Since you know me, you still dare to come and deliver food?" Mao Zhan laughed loudly. "You're living in a dream. Do you think this is Meteor City? Whose food is whose?" Ding Ming was too lazy to pay attention to him. He took off the shiny gold backpack from his shoulder and slowly placed it in the center of the table. Then he said seriously, "The inverse source crystal you want is in this backpack. Take it back if you can." This was his old trick. He would first use psychological tactics to make it difficult for his opponent to distinguish between the real and the fake. Mao Zhan was indeed stunned. He definitely would not believe this nonsense. But whether it was nonsense or not, he had no reason not to grab the backpack and open it first. Therefore, 2 seconds later, he made his move. He slapped the backpack with a palm as big as a wash basin. However, he did not know what was in the backpack. It was like a piece of steel weighing thousands of kilograms. No matter how hard he tried, he could not grab it. Crack. Cracks began to appear on the orange wooden dining table. The cracks spread and became thicker. Then, with a cracking sound, it broke into pieces. It turned out that although Mao Zhan's hand was pressing down on the backpack from the top, Ding Ming's hand was pulling it back from under the table. Mao Zhan smiled. "Interesting," Ding Ming said indifferently. "Not at all." Mao Zhan quickly stopped laughing because he realized that as his energy increased, the backpack didn't move at all. This Ding Ming in front of him had an energy index that was no lower than that of an advanced warrior. This time, Mao Zhan didn't dare to be negligent. He rapidly increased his origin energy and concentrated it in his right palm. The backpack seemed to be covered in a layer of white energy. This was the origin energy that was being released. His goal was very simple. He wanted to use his profound origin energy to forcefully absorb the backpack. Ding Ming suddenly laughed. "You are very childish, really." Mao Zhan was furious. "Get the hell out of my way." His left hand had long since activated tempered skin. At the same time, a light yellow origin steel shield appeared. Unlike Chung riffing from the Skywolf Core, his shield actually looked like a gauntlet. It wrapped around his entire arm, and his fist was almost the size of an oversized basketball. This backhanded punch was aimed at Ding Ming's face. In his mind, Ding Ming's face would soon be smashed like a persimmon. Pong! The sound of the fist colliding could be heard clearly throughout the dining room. But Ding Ming's face wasn't the one that was smashed. At the same time that Mao Zhan used his martial skill, Ding Ming raised his left hand and slashed backwards. He didn't aim for anything else but his fist. The light yellow shield instantly turned into countless beautiful sparks that scattered in all directions. Mao Zhan's fist bounced back, and his palm and wrist felt numb. "You!" Mao Zhan was shocked. Was this kid a war reverend? Ding Ming was still laughing. "Unfortunately, I can't get out of your way." "Is that so?" Mao Zhan suddenly stood up and pressed down on Ding Ming. His right hand once again activated the origin steel shield. This time, it was a standard square shield. Furthermore, his body was huge, and the distance between them was so close. He deliberately wanted to crush Ding Ming to death. However, Ding Ming didn't face him head-on. The bench he was sitting on suddenly broke in two. His whole body leaned back and lay on the ground. At the same time, his right foot kicked into the air, easily sending Mao Zhan's pig-like body flying to the bar behind him. The bar was also made of wood, so there was no way it could withstand such heavy pressure. With a crash, it broke into pieces, and Mao Zhan was instantly buried in the rubble. Ding Ming clapped his hands and laughed. What a pig-like dive! What a beautiful posture! Hearing this, Mao Zhan was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He hated it when people called him a pig, so after climbing up from the rubble, he didn't hold back anymore. He howled and charged forward like a roaring rhinoceros. This was no small matter. First, the multiple origin steel shields turned into a mirror image of a gorilla and wrapped around him. Then, his tempered skin turned into spikes that covered his entire body. Finally, he used ash resonance and gale flash strike at the same time. He also used explosive martial arts in between. As he charged forward, he raised his fists high and smashed down in the most primitive and ancient way, like a wild beast charging out of a cage. The tables and chairs around him were swept up by the momentum of the charge, forming swirling airflows in the air. This attack was like a thunderbolt, unstoppable. Facing this tidal wave of attacks, Ding Meng didn't dodge. He bounced up on the spot and used the scissor kick from the 9 forms of sparrow attack. After spinning in the air, he swept his leg towards Mao Zhan. Boom! All of the airflows suddenly exploded, and the tables and chairs around him were reduced to dust. Following that, the plating of the origin energy shields disappeared as well. Mao Zhan knelt on the ground. Ding Meng's kick had landed on his neck, forcing him to kneel on the ground. He couldn't even straighten his back. What frightening strength was this? Even now, he still couldn't sense Ding Meng's true origin energy fluctuations. Just like Jia Mao, he could only sense that the origin energy in his opponent's body was faintly discernible and indistinct. However, he still wasn't willing to admit defeat. He reached out to grab Ding Meng's ankle. Unfortunately, he couldn't grab it, because as soon as he moved his hand, Ding Meng's hand moved even faster. Bang! This sound was like a firecracker going off. It was extremely powerful. Ding Meng's fist landed on Mao Zhan's temple. This time, it wasn't as simple as kneeling. Mao Zhan's entire body was sprawled on the ground. His head smashed into the steel plate on the ground, causing a large depression. Mao Zhan's brain was a mess. It was as if there were dozens of golden pockmarks flashing in front of his eyes. The origin energy in his body was actually stagnant for a few seconds because of this punch. However, origin energy users of the adamantium system were indeed tyrannical. Mao Zhan let out an angry roar and forcefully activated his origin energy. He jumped up fiercely. He didn't believe that a youngster like Ding Meng would be able to knock him down. Another bang sounded out. It was that forceful sound again. Ding Meng's punch was exactly the same as before. His fist landed on Mao Zhan's temple from top to bottom. Mao Zhan fell to the ground again. His head had smashed into the depression, causing a small crack to appear. One had to know that this was an alloy steel plate. It wasn't hard to imagine how powerful Ding Meng's punch was. F***CK your mother. Mao Zhan was furious. In less than 3 seconds, he forcefully activated his origin energy again. He gritted his teeth and stood up. In fact, this was also one of the advantages of being a member of the Extreme Pirate Group. He was able to resist, fight, and take a beating. Every time he fell, he could quickly stand up and fight desperately with his opponent. This was why the other mercenaries were afraid of him. This guy had a kind of indestructible momentum. However, no matter how fierce his momentum was, Ding Meng only had one move, which was to knock him down with a single punch. The same action, the same posture, the familiar formula, and the same taste. Mao Zhan stood up for a total of 2 seconds and then hit his head on the ground again. After the third punch, he couldn't forcefully activate his origin energy anymore. He could only stagger and struggle to get up. Ding Meng had been looking at him expressionlessly. It wasn't until Mao Zhan stood still that he punched him fiercely. Bang! Mao Zhan's tempered skin had been broken. The left side of his head was finally broken. Blood flowed down his cheek, and his face was a little deformed. Ding Meng looked at him condescendingly and crooked his finger at him. Get up! Mao Zhan glared at Ding Meng, his eyes almost spitting fire. However, his current physical condition was not enough to support his outburst of anger. He felt that his head was heavy, and he couldn't straighten his back no matter how hard he tried. Didn't you eat so many placentas and brains? It seems that they're not very nutritious. Even pigs are better than you. Ding Meng said expressionlessly. Hearing this, Mao Zhan felt that his eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. He held his breath and took a deep breath. Finally, he stood up straight. Ding Meng nodded. Very good. As soon as his voice fell, he unreasonably punched Mao Zhan again. Mao Zhan fell down again. Bang, 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 bang. At this moment, there was only this monotonous sound in the restaurant. The time it took for Mao Zhan to stand up was slower and slower, but Ding Ming's fists were fiercer and fiercer. In fact, Ding Ming's punches had completely reduced Mao Zhan's momentum to its original state. He was going to beat Mao Zhan until he didn't even dare to stand up. By the 10th punch, Mao Zhan's eyes, ears, nose, and mouth were all bleeding. His entire head was completely deformed, and he could no longer stand up. However, Ding Ming would not let go of this pirate leader who ate women's placentas and children's brains so easily, especially when he thought of Xiao Shanzi's tragic death and Ah Xiao's madness. Every time he thought of these images, Ding Ming's anger was probably 10 times that of Mao Zhan's total. Bang! Ding Ming grabbed Mao Zhan's neck and lifted him up like a pile of mud. Don't worry, you can't die even if you want to. Let me help you move your muscles. Chapter 243. Bang, bang, bang. There was a series of rapid sounds. It sounded like one sound, but in fact, it was dozens of 1-inch punches. Ka-ka-ka, cracking sounds came from Mao Zhan's shoulder and chest. His shoulder bones and ribs were basically completely shattered. Following that, Ding Ming's fist smashed into his heart. There was no other meaning to it. It would be a bit troublesome to completely kill a beginner war elder, but it wouldn't be a problem to cripple you. The rhythm of these 7 or 8 straight punches was really quite slow, but every punch hit the flesh. Mao Zhan had lost consciousness, and only a weak perception existed. You can rest now. Ding Ming suddenly hit him in the chin with a hook. First, he was sent flying backward until he flew more than 10 meters away. Then, he turned halfway and punched again in the air. Mao Zhan, who was flying backward in the air, seemed to be shocked by another powerful force. The air suddenly exploded violently with a bang, and he was sent flying again. It was obvious that his upper body had suffered a fatal blow. Although his entire chest was still connected, it was bent at a 90-degree angle. In the end, Mao Zhan crashed into the door of the safe passage next to the bar counter. The iron door had completely collapsed, and he curled up beside the door like a pile of rotten meat. Little Rascal finally praised, "Good, good. The power of the cannon force that Ren Tianlan taught you is really good." Ding Ming turned on the light screen on his wrist device and said in a deep voice, "You can go out now. Be careful. Don't be discovered." At the same time, in the circular square, the power of the 4 buildings was restored. All the lights were on, including the projector on the roof, the fountain, the lighting of the building, the street lamps, and the flower bed. The artificial island of the Extreme Pirate Corps seemed to be restored from the darkness to the colorful and beautiful world before in an instant. Guanbai breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that there is no problem. Hu Biao also raised his chin arrogantly. What problem can there be with old Mao? They're just a bunch of useless people. Lu Ming's face darkened, and he didn't reply. He was much stronger than Guanbai and Hu Biao. In his perception, after Mao Zhan went down, his aura instantly increased by a lot. It was obvious that he had found his target and started fighting. However, there was almost no special fluctuation on the side that was fighting. It was exactly that feeling, faintly discernible and erratic. Next, Mao Zhan's aura instantly rose to the peak. The strange thing was that his opponent still had the same fluctuation. Next, Mao Zhan's aura gradually weakened until it disappeared. His opponent didn't seem to have changed, but in the end, there were no more origin energy fluctuations. In such a situation, there were only 2 possible outcomes. One was that Mao Zhan finished off his opponent, and the other was that Mao Zhan was tortured to death by an even stronger opponent. Of course, the possibility of the latter was just as Hu Biao had predicted. What problem could there be? In outer space, there were only a few people who could defeat Mao Zhan in a one-on-one fight. It was impossible for them to show up here. If they did, they wouldn't fight with the Extreme Pirate Corps. That's right. Everyone was responding to the saying, "Harmony breeds wealth." Lu Ming was deep in thought. Little did he know that at this moment, by the window on the 26th floor of Building 1, Su Mengxing was watching the changes in the square. Elan's expression was very puzzled. That's not right. The wolf's aura has disappeared. Did Mao Zhan kill it? Is that so? Su Mengxing asked, but she wasn't asking Elan, but someone else. The male bodyguard was still wearing sunglasses. He didn't seem to have any expression, and his answer was quite simple. No. Elan was surprised. The wolf killed Mao Zhan. That's a beginner war venerable. Su Mengxing's voice was a little emotional. He's not a real wolf. I'm looking forward to it this time. Zheng Hao, your green arrow has been tinkering with it for so many years. Let's see if the person you sent this time can earn some face for you. About 10 minutes later, a person finally appeared in the hall on the first floor of Building 3. Seeing this person, Hu Biao smiled. I told you, there's nothing old Mao can't handle. Mao Zhan walked out of the hall on the first floor expressionlessly. It was not until he walked onto the tarmac of the circular square that everyone noticed that he was carrying another person. This person's right arm was broken at the elbow, and 2 fingers on his left hand were missing. His entire body was covered in blood, and he seemed to have fainted. It was Jia Mao, who had been abused by Ding Ming in the material warehouse. With a bang, Mao Zhan threw Jia Mao in the center of the tarmac. His eyes were looking at Lu Ming, but Lu Ming's eyes were looking at Chu Zhongyu, who was not far away. Seeing Jia Mao's miserable state, Chu Zhongyu's anger was far greater than his surprise. He frowned. Who did this? Mao Zhan took off the shiny gold backpack from his shoulder and handed it to Lu Ming. The things are in here. Lu Ming nodded, and then said meaningfully, Brother Chu, it seems that we didn't treat you well. Chu Zhongyu wasn't an idiot. He knew that Lu Ming was questioning him. What happened to Jia Mao? At this moment, 2 bodyguards behind Chu Zhongyu rushed up to save Jia Mao, but the broken fingers couldn't be healed with medicine. They had to be regenerated with the help of medical pods. Jia Mao finally woke up. His face was still full of shock. Wild wolf, it's wild wolf. Mao Zhan frowned. I took this thing from him. Jia Mao suddenly shouted, not me, it's wild wolf. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Brother Chu, what do you think? Clearly, Lu Ming was suspicious of Haitian group, now that Jia Mao had been captured. Chu Zhongyu's face darkened. Captain Lu, if I think Jia Mao is telling the truth, what would you think? Lu Ming smiled. Brother Chu, old Mao never lies. Chu Zhongyu spread his hands. If you don't believe me, then there's nothing I can do. Objectively speaking, if I really wanted that thing, it would have been mine long ago. These words made sense. Lu Ming had to admit that if Chu Zhongyu really wanted to get the inverse source crystal, he didn't need to go through so much trouble. Right now, between Mao Zhan and Jia Mao, one of them had to be lying. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly felt that the surrounding air was somewhat hot. This heat wasn't an origin ability fluctuation, but more like a heat wave. It instantly enveloped him, and his skin faintly felt hot. Not good. This time, even Guan Bai and Hu Biao felt it. The 2 of them quickly circulated their origin energy to resist. When they looked up again, the source of this heat wave was actually coming from Mao Zhan. With him as the center, the air within a 50-meter radius seemed to be somewhat distorted. When they turned their heads again, the 70 to 80 mercenaries that had gathered had silently collapsed. Their guns and weapons scattered all over the ground. Old Mao Hu Biao was shocked. He couldn't figure out what was going on. But at this moment, Lu Ming smiled. I didn't expect the famous Nightmare Lord to come to our Cypress planet as a guest. What an honor. Mao Zhan also smiled, letting out a string of crisp laughter like silver bells. Then, he used Phantom Fantasy, and the image of Lu Fei in the purple mist was transformed. This Mao Zhan was indeed a fake. This time, everyone raised their vigilance. The Nightmare Lord was quite famous in outer space. Besides, she wouldn't come to the temple for no reason. Obviously, she was here for the inverse source crystal. Lu Ming reacted quickly. Without even thinking, he suddenly threw the dazzling gold backpack in his hand into the air. Everyone, get out of the way. But it was too late. The backpack exploded in the air with a boom, releasing a large cloud of dark green smoke. It was obvious that this was poisonous gas. Furthermore, based on the nightmare's usual methods, it wasn't any ordinary poison. The smoke quickly spread like ripples in the air. In the blink of an eye, it formed a layer of green gauze over everyone's heads. With the strength of Lu Ming's group of origin energy users, they could naturally resist it, but the ordinary mercenaries suffered. Hundreds of them were not spared. They all choked and coughed violently. In fact, these people knew that the Nightmare Lord was good at using poisons, but this was the first time they had seen her use them. A large group of mercenaries couldn't stop coughing at first. Then someone couldn't stand still and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. The color of the blood was purple with a hint of black. Obviously, it was a very powerful poison. Then, no one could stand still anymore. They fell to the ground and began to twitch. These people's limbs were kicking wildly. Blood of the same color oozed out of their eyes, ears, mouths, and noses. Not long after, their bodies were shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye, like withered corpses. This scene was so creepy that even Chu Zhongyu was dumbfounded. Lu Ming could still keep calm. He snorted disdainfully. "Nightmare, you came to visit my extreme pirate regiment. Aren't your methods too cruel?" The Nightmare Lord laughed and said, "Haha, Captain Lu, you're too stingy. You've killed tens of thousands of people on planet KV-303. I've only poisoned 100 of your people, and you're already reluctant?" Hu Biao couldn't hold back any longer. He quickly rushed up and pushed his palm out. How could the Nightmare Lord dare to take his palm head-on? She lightly retreated more than 10 meters in the direction of Building 3. But this palm was quite exaggerated. The palm didn't hit anyone, but the wind from the palm lifted a bluebird shuttle into the air. The shuttle somersaulted a few times in the air before it smashed into the guardrail on the side of the bridge on the main road. Together with the guardrail, it fell into the lake under the bridge. Hu Biao didn't chase anymore, because at this time, everyone's eyes were looking at Building 3. The person hadn't come out yet, but everyone sensed a very powerful energy fluctuation coming out of the hall on the first floor. This was obviously thermal energy. It was even hotter than the heat wave that Meng Yan had released when she first cast Little Red Riding Hood. Hu Biao noticed that the blood spurting out of the mercenaries' corpses on the ground instantly dried up. It was obvious that a real expert in thermal energy had come to Building 3. The expert didn't come out. The one who smashed the window and flew out first was the half-dead Mao Zhan. He was thrown out. He directly hit a lamp post on the side of the bridge and then lay in the middle of the road. Lu Ming couldn't hold back anymore. In his perception, Mao Zhan's bones were almost all broken. His heart had suffered a violent blow, and his breath was already quite weak. He looked like he could only breathe out air. Even if he could be saved, he would be crippled. Who was so bold to cripple the commander of the 2nd Regiment of the Extreme Pirate Regiment? Lu Ming was really curious. Chapter 244. This powerful heat was naturally emitted from Ding Ming. At this moment, he didn't disguise himself as a wolf anymore. Instead, he showed his true face and slowly walked onto the bridge from the hall on the first floor. There was no other purpose in doing this. Didn't the Haitian group and the Extreme Pirate Troop want to leave a deeper impression on me? Well, I'll leave an unforgettable impression on you today. Hu Biao's eyes widened. Ding Ming, on the 26th floor, Su Mengqing immediately turned her head and said, "Hurry up and find out who this man is." Ding Ming didn't bother to talk nonsense. He directly stepped on Mao Zhan's deformed face and said, "I heard that this is the leader of the 2nd Regiment of the Extreme Pirate Troop." Lu Ming and the others all frowned and looked at him, not understanding what he meant. Ding Ming said, "I haven't eaten human brains yet. Today, I'd like to have a taste." As soon as he said this, the faces of Lu Ming and the others all changed. This guy was not only bold, but also arrogant to a certain extent. Hu Biao sneered. "Good boy, I didn't catch you last time. This time you actually took the initiative to come to me." Ding Ming stretched out his right hand and crooked his finger at him. "Come on, you're courting death." Hu Biao didn't dare to be careless. He ran his origin energy and jumped up. His whole body rolled towards Ding Ming like a storm. The momentum of his attack was very unique. He rotated horizontally in the air, and his palms kept changing gestures in front of him, as if rolling up a fireball. Anyone with eyes could see that this was the result of the holy flame formation that had been practiced to at least the first level of the peak realm. It was definitely not something that a warrior-level origin ability user could resist. However, Ding Ming didn't even move a single step. Seeing Hu Biao's attack, Ding Ming casually made a grabbing motion, and the red light that filled the sky immediately disappeared. Hu Biao's earth-shattering aura was completely gone. Because he didn't know what happened, Ding Ming suddenly grabbed his right wrist and locked him tightly like an alloy steel hoop. Ding Ming's lips curled into a disdainful sneer. "I heard that you made a special trip to planet KV-303 to look for me?" Hu Biao couldn't reply. His wrist felt like it was being clamped by a red-hot iron. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull it back. Moreover, the heat from the other party's hand was like molten steel spreading up his arm. The origin ability in his body couldn't withstand it at all. "Why aren't you talking?" Ding Ming looked down at him. Ugh! Large beads of sweat dripped down from Hu Biao's head. Unfortunately, he couldn't move his wrist. "Looks like I'll have to make you open your mouth." Ding Ming's claw suddenly twisted, and with a kacha sound, Hu Biao immediately knelt down on one knee, because his wrist had been directly broken by Ding Ming. However, he was quite tough. Even after suffering such intense pain, he still clenched his teeth and didn't make a sound. Ding Ming nodded and said expressionlessly, "You want to force yourself? Well, I'll satisfy you." At this moment, the Extreme Pirate Corps couldn't sit still anymore. Guanbai had already activated his origin ability and rushed forward. Ding Ming didn't even look at him. His left hand chopped through the air. Guanbai rushed to the center of the bridge. It was as if he had crashed into an invisible wall. With a bang, he was bounced back. The power of this cannon was not to be underestimated. It felt as if an alloy steel pipe had struck the center of his forehead. Guanbai fell to the ground. A stream of blood flowed out from his nose. His face was filled with disbelief. A beginner war elder was actually shaken to the point of having a nosebleed by a casual explosion from someone else. While he was still in shock, Ding Ming grabbed Hu Biao's arm and twisted it mercilessly. With another hair-raising crack, Hu Biao's right arm was broken from the elbow joint. Now, forget about using origin ability to resist. He was in so much pain that he couldn't even shout. His expression was twisted. "Stop!" Lu Ming had to speak. "Friend, our Extreme Pirate Corps has no grudge against you. Isn't your method a bit too harsh?" Ding Ming couldn't help but turn his head and sneer. "No grudge? This Hu guy slaughtered more than 40,000 refugees from my Green Arrow base. How dare you say that you have no grudge against him?" In fact, Lu Ming didn't know that Hu Biao led the team to attack KV-303. He only knew about it when Hu Biao was on the way back, but so what? He had never taken Fang Zhenghao and the others seriously, but now that the Green Arrow Corps had invited such a fierce person, he began to pay attention to them. Lu Ming said in a deep voice, "Friend, I admit that I was negligent in this matter, but peace is the most important thing. Don't go too far." The answer was Ding Ming's claws. A few dark golden lights flashed like ghosts, and Hu Biao finally cried out in pain. He was used to living like a prince. How could he stand this kind of abuse? Ding Ming's technique of separating tendons and dislocating bones had long been perfected. The claws didn't take much effort at all. They cut through Hu Biao's tendons, veins, and bones in a few moves. Then, he tore off Hu Biao's entire right arm and threw it into the lake. Of course, he couldn't just let it go. With a flip of his claws, Ding Ming hooked Hu Biao's jaw and lifted him up. "Look carefully. I'm a bounty hunter from the Green Arrow Corps." Ding Ming stared at him coldly. "Your dog life isn't worth much. I'm too lazy to kill dogs." After saying that, he punched Hu Biao's heart. Hu Biao's body curled into a semicircle. The clothes on his back suddenly burst open, as if an invisible force had exploded. This punch with explosive force had shaken all the origin points and construction effects in his heart into pieces. It would be strange if he wasn't crippled. On the 26th floor, Elon handed the wristwatch to Su Mengqing. The screen showed Ding Ming's information. Su Mengqing looked at it carefully and smiled. It really is him. He's that wild wolf. Ilan was a little confused. Miss Su, are you sure? Of course, Su Mengqing was sure, but she couldn't tell her the reason. Previously, she sat on Ding Ming's lap and teased him. Although it seemed like she was touching him randomly, she actually had a rough idea of Ding Ming's head. Now that she carefully compared it with the mirror image, she was 100% sure that this Ding Ming was Wild Wolf. She used the most primitive method of a woman to figure out a man's body structure, but it was undoubtedly very effective. At this moment, Hu Biao was also lying on top of Mao Zhan like a dead pig. Ding Ming slowly walked to the center of the square and looked at Lu Ming expressionlessly. His expressionless face expressed what he wanted to say. Now it's your turn. Lu Ming suddenly took off his suit, pulled off his tie, and slowly unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his strong muscles. This was not a warm-up, but a way to relieve the pressure on his mind. From the beginning, he had been carefully observing Ding Ming. Unfortunately, no matter how he scanned him with his perception, Ding Ming's body only emitted the origin energy of a high-level warrior. Only when he was abusing someone would he instantly burst out with an extremely shocking aura. This was exactly the same feeling as before, faintly discernible, illusory. Lu Ming didn't think that Ding Ming's strength would be below his own, so he was ready to go all out. In fact, he was feeling more regret now. He didn't regret that Hu Biao had taken the order to deal with Green Arrow, but regretted that he had been too careless in this trade fair. Why didn't he make the security check more stringent and let someone like Ding Ming sneak in? Of course, it was too late to regret now. Even if Ding Ming hadn't sneaked in, Fang Jinghao would have found another way to talk to him. Looking from the 26th floor, Ding Ming and Lu Ming were less than 10 meters apart, but the two of them were quietly looking at each other. There was no sign that they were ready to attack. Su Mengqing was puzzled. Why aren't they attacking? Ilan sneered. This Lu Ming is cunning. Although the nightmare has poisoned the people on the ground, there are still snipers around the building. Su Mengqing immediately understood. The sniper energy guns used by these mercenaries might not be able to hurt Ding Ming, but once they interfered with Ding Ming, Lu Ming would have a chance. In a battle between experts, victory or defeat was often decided in an instant. The male bodyguard suddenly said, if that's the case, Ding Ming can get rid of Lu Ming in a minute. Ilan was shocked. A minute. Lu Ming is an intermediate-level war venerable. The male bodyguard was still very calm. Maybe not even a minute. Ilan was speechless. In fact, her judgment was not wrong. While Ding Ming and Lu Ming were facing each other, the rooftops of the 4 buildings suddenly flashed. More than 20 bright red and fine beams of light shot down like lightning. It was like several laser beams were forcibly converging. However, something inconceivable happened. Ding Ming didn't dodge at all. He raised his right hand and allowed these energy beams to shoot at him. All of the energy beams stopped in the center of his open palm and slowly formed a fiery red pupil of light. The pupil of light grew larger and brighter, just like a giant ruby. Lu Ming didn't even make a move. He seemed to be a little stunned. It was the first time he had seen someone block a sniper rifle in such a way. Of course, he didn't know that Ding Ming's diamond star fusing art was absorbing and melting the energy beams. Using ordinary energy weapons to attack Ding Ming was actually increasing his strength. The male bodyguard said in a low voice, he's practicing martial arts of fusion. Sure enough, as the weapons of the Heavenly Cycle platform's mercenaries ran out of energy, the beam disappeared, and the red pupil gradually weakened until it finally disappeared into nothingness. Ding Ming was not hurt at all. Instead, he was still clapping his hands casually. The Extreme Pirate Troupe seems to be very rich. They can easily take out hundreds of billions to bid. Lu Ming stared at him coldly. What do you want to say? Ding Ming said, my meaning is very simple. Donate all the money to the Green Arrow Troop, and I can give you a way out. Lu Ming couldn't help but laugh. You are really a very thoughtful person. What you think is impossible. Ding Ming sighed. There's no other way. There's a way out, but you don't want to live. You just have to die. Lu Ming said sternly. It's not certain who will live and who will die. After saying this, he finally moved, and the way he moved was very strange. He didn't rush out like Mao Zhan, Hu Biao, and the others, but slowly walked towards Ding Ming. Elon only felt that Lu Ming was extraordinarily bold. He actually dared to fight a strong enemy in such a way. But the male bodyguard nodded approvingly. Well, Lu Ming might be able to last a minute. Chapter 245. It made sense for Lu Ming to choose to walk forward slowly. Ding Ming had caught the laser with his bare hands, which completely dispelled his previous idea of stealing the chicken. Sometimes, when an origin ability user's strength reached a certain level, they would know in their heart that if they met an opponent of the same level, victory or defeat would be decided by a few moves. Playing those fancy tricks or unorthodox tricks was not creating opportunities, but digging one's own grave. Now, the two of them were less than 3 meters apart. Ding Ming was still standing there coldly, without even moving his feet. However, the heat radiating from the two of them stirred up the lake water under the bridge. Without any warning, Lu Ming suddenly swung out a palm. This palm was a bit like Ding Ming's hand knife, but Lu Ming didn't cut out. Instead, he slashed at Ding Ming's face. At this moment, his body seemed to be shrouded by the mirror image of a golden ancient warrior. The warrior held 2 flat, rectangular swords. Lu Ming's palm was in front, and the 2 swords followed closely behind. They also slashed at Ding Ming's forehead. This martial technique, blazing battle pattern, was almost the standard martial technique of the Holy Grail Federation. It was the release of origin energy from the body of the origin ability user. It was different from Source Steel Shield, which was purely for strong defense and close combat. However, once the blazing battle pattern was used, it would expand a field of origin energy in the nearby area, creating the effects of various types of origin energy. For someone like Lu Ming, who was a thermodynamic user, not only did it have a strong oppressive effect, but when the 2 swords were raised, even the corpses around were vaporized. For a moment, the square was filled with a strong light, and the shuttle cars parked around were overturned. The force of this palm was as turbulent as a flood passing through. Ding Ming also knew that Lu Ming was an intermediate war venerable. His strength was not to be underestimated, and the method he used to deal with Mao Zhan and Hu Biao would not work. Therefore, when Lu Ming's palm came, Ding Ming's 6 origin points were operating at full force, and he slashed out with a backhand knife. This time, he did not meet force with force. Instead, he greeted Lu Ming's shoulder. Because his speed was obviously faster, he could reach Lu Ming first. Lu Ming's reaction was not slow either. He abruptly stopped his palm blade and quickly changed his posture to use his right elbow to catch Ding Ming's palm blade. With a muffled bang, the 2 sources of energy collided, and the surrounding air suddenly exploded. The stone slabs on the ground were shaken into the air, and countless gravel splattered in all directions. The shuttle cars in the square were all shaken into the lake, and even the lampposts by the roadside were blown away. In the huge shock, Lu Ming was knocked back more than 10 meters by Ding Ming. Although he was knocked back, the burning sun battle pattern was not affected. The 2 sabers were launched in the blink of an eye. In Lu Ming's vision, the saber had clearly cut into Ding Ming's head. For some reason, it turned into countless golden powder with a ding-ling sound, scattering like stars in the sky. There were probably only a few people present who saw it clearly. Ding Ming's entire body was shrouded by a diamond mirror that was even more golden in color. It only flashed slightly and then quickly disappeared. When a saber hit the diamond, it was like a jade hitting an alloy. It couldn't shake it all. The male bodyguard suddenly turned around. "Miss Su, let's go." Su Mengqing was enjoying watching. She could not help but wonder, "Are we just going to leave like this?" The male bodyguard said, "No need to watch. Lu Ming can't escape. If we don't leave now, it will be even harder to leave later." He did not make any rash judgments, because the moment his saber shattered, Ding Ming's hand suddenly turned into a fist, and he charged forward. He was so fast that before Lu Ming could regain his footing, fire energy rushing fist was already right in front of him. Lu Ming's pupils suddenly shrank. He knew that his opponent was powerful, but he did not expect him to be so powerful. In terms of speed alone, he was not at the same level as Ding Ming. But now he had no time to think about it. He quickly closed his palms to take the punch. With a crisp bang, his closed palms were quickly shaken away. The flame energy penetrating force hit his chest. This time, he did not slide back, but was completely shaken away. Just like Mao Zhan, before he landed on the ground, Ding Meng punched out again. Lu Ming, who was in midair, was hit hard by the blast again. A row of coconut tree trunks by the flower bed were broken by his back. From the moment Lu Ming attacked to the moment he fell to the ground, it was a total of 5 seconds. It was so fast that it was shocking. This pirate leader in outer space, who was feared by many forces, could not even fight back in front of Ding Meng. The main reason was that Ding Meng had made great progress in his cultivation on planet V4 in the past few months. The Diamond Star technique was a technique that would become stronger as one progressed. It was the kind of technique that was completely unreasonable. When Lu Ming crawled out from the pile of fallen branches, he was shocked to find that Ding Meng was standing in front of him, staring coldly at him. It was only at this time that he suddenly realized that the other party was not an opponent of equal strength, but far stronger than him. When did Fang Jinghao manage to hire such a fighter? Lu Ming gritted his teeth and said, "Do you know who I am?" Ding Meng said indifferently, "It doesn't matter who you are." Lu Ming hissed, "My old man is Lu Jinfeng, the former deputy commander of the Federation's fleet, I know." Ding Meng was the scariest when he was expressionless. "You wanted to let you go." Seeing that his tone had eased, Lu Ming hurriedly said, "I just said that everyone values harmony, and harmony brings wealth. Brother, if you have anything to tell me in the future, I will definitely do it immediately. I promise." Ding Meng was still expressionless, but his tone was a little emotional. "Your old man is Lu Jinfeng. The tens of thousands of people on planet KV-303 don't have an old man like him. So you can live, but they deserve to die?" Lu Ming thought quickly and waved his hand. "No, definitely not. Brother, I am willing to donate 10 billion star credits to Fang Jinghao to rebuild the base for the refugees. What do you think?" Ding Meng snorted disdainfully. "I gave you a chance just now, but you didn't cherish it. It's too late to say anything now." Before Lu Ming could answer, a strong dark golden light suddenly rose. He screamed and fell to the ground. His right arm had been cut off from the shoulder. Blood quickly dyed the green flower bed red. Ding Meng still had the ancient sword on his belt, as if it had never been pulled out at all. Lu Ming had to beg for mercy this time. His voice was worse than crying. "Wait, it was Wu Biao who did this. I didn't know it beforehand." What he meant was that if Lu Ming wanted revenge, he should look for the real culprit. Why did he look for him? "I know," Ding Meng said unhurriedly. "When those women and children were killed, I didn't know either. I only know that it was your extreme pirate troop who did it." This meant that no matter who did it, this account would be on Lu Ming's head. In fact, Ding Meng had considered this problem on his way here. Whether it was Wu Biao or Lu Ming, the pirate leaders of the extreme pirate troop had to die anyway. If these people were not completely eliminated, he was afraid that they would bring endless trouble to the Green Arrow troop. To cut the weeds, he had to dig up the roots. Only by killing Lu Ming could he intimidate the entire cypress tree. Lu Ming believed that he was also a person of status, but he did not expect that this young boy would be so stubborn and ignore his explanation. At this moment, he did not care about the sharp pain of his broken arm. He struggled to get up and pounced on Ding Meng. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. There was another flash of sword light, and Lu Ming fell down again. This time, he could not stand up again, and he would never be able to stand up again because Ding Meng had directly cut off his left ankle. This time, the sword was not sheathed. Ding Meng slowly walked forward with the long sword. The tip of the sword was still dripping with blood. Lu Ming struggled to crawl forward on the ground. After crawling for 5 meters, his head suddenly left his body and was thrown into the air. Ding Meng's wrist shook, and the sword light flashed rapidly in the air. Lu Ming's head turned into countless pieces of flesh and blood that scattered in all directions. Ding Meng turned his hand again. With a click, the sword was finally sheathed. Then he slowly turned and faced the people on the bridge of building number 1. Chu Zhongyu and the other 6 people did not leave. Instead, they watched him torture the leaders of the extreme pirate troop. Chu Zhongyu even looked at Ding Meng with interest. "Brother Ding, I didn't expect you to be so skillful at such a young age. Come and work for our Haitian group. A small place like Green Arrow can't accommodate you. Haitian group can give you a bigger platform to show your skills. What do you think? Are you interested?" Ding Meng sneered. "I'm only interested in this person." His eyes fell on Jia Mao. Jia Mao was supported by 2 other bodyguards. After taking the healing agent, his injuries were temporarily stabilized. However, Ding Meng would not let him go so easily. Chu Zhongyu's face darkened. "Haven't you heard of the Haitian group?" Ding Meng had more than heard of it. Since the Black Gold base, he had been dealing with this force. This time was no exception. Killing Lu Ming and the other pirates was just an appetizer. The real difficult ones were the people in front of him. "Do you know why I want to kill the extreme pirate troop?" Ding Meng suddenly asked. Chu Zhongyu obviously knew the whole story in the fight just now, but so what? It was just a group of alien refugees who died. He could not hand Jia Mao over to die now, could he? Chu Zhongyu said proudly, "Brother Ding, there are only a few people in the Federation who can make me hand over my men. You'd better think carefully. Do you really want Brother Jia? I don't expect you to give in." Ding Meng walked onto the bridge. "You bastards with the surname Chu. This time, I'll settle all my old and new grudges." Seeing Ding Meng coming forward with bad intentions, a male bodyguard behind Chu Zhongyu quickly stood up and said in a low voice, "Hui Mao, Little Gu, protect 4th Young Master and Brother Jia. Hao Feng, stay here. We'll take care of this." Seeing Chu Zhongyu and the other 3 leave, Ding Meng did not chase after them. The 2 men in suits in front of him were the 2 men who had surrounded Chu Zhongyu when he came to the venue in Building 1. Even with telekinetic vision, it was difficult to see through them. Chu Yifeng and Lan Binger had made trouble for him time and time again. This time, it was time for him to take the initiative to make them bleed. Ding Meng had already made up his mind. This time, he would not be kind on Cypress Planet. Since he met the Haitian group again, it was time to settle the previous score. Of course, the score of a Man of Steel was not settled with money, but with life. Chapter 246. As the 2 of them slowly walked towards the center of the bridge, the colorful lights on the island in the middle of the lake suddenly went out. The entire space was once again plunged into complete darkness. The man in the suit and Hao Feng did not seem to be affected. They continued walking side by side until they were 10 meters away from Ding Meng. The man in the suit slowly took off his sunglasses, revealing a slightly aged but dignified face. It seemed that he was not just a simple entourage. "Hello, Ding Meng." Surprisingly, the man in the suit said such a sentence. However, this did not make Ding Meng relax. Instead, he became even more vigilant. He had already smelled the danger signal. The man in the suit continued, "Actually, you are very lucky to have survived until now." Ding Meng stared at him. "Do we know each other?" The man in the suit said calmly, "It's normal that you don't know me, but I know you." Ding Meng said, "Oh." The man in the suit said, "Sky Wolf Corps' Meteor City. I was originally assigned to go there, but I had an urgent matter to attend to at the last minute, so Brother Jia took my place." Ding Meng could understand what he meant. If this man in the suit had really gone to Meteor City, then he, Nightmare, Dai, Ian Mao Zi would not have been able to escape. The man in the suit said, "You don't have to explain. Brother Jia was injured by you last time, and this time his hand must have been cut off by you as well. I think we are even. Now that you want his life, it doesn't make sense." Ding Meng sneered. "Then his life is too valuable. It's actually worth more than 40,000 lives in Green Arrow Base." The man in the suit said calmly, "These are 2 different things." Ding Meng asked curiously, "Oh." The man in the suit said, "You stole the virus memory chip from our corporation, but now, please give me the bag on your shoulder. Whatever grudges you have with Ms. Feng Xiaobing, that is not something I should care about. It is also not within the scope of my responsibilities." Ding Meng could not help but laugh. "If you say it was stolen, then it was stolen. You can say whatever you want. I really find it strange. I found it and dug it out. So far, no one has paid me a cent, but you want me to give it to you?" The man in the suit said, although fourth young master usually likes women, Haitian group asked me to accompany him. Naturally, I have to take back this thing. That was right. Although Chu Zhongyu was brainless to pick up girls, it did not mean that the power behind him was also stupid. They must be thinking about the inverse source crystal. Lu Ming's death was not unjust. Even if he did not die in Ding Meng's hands, he would have been played to death by these big corporations. He thought he was smart enough to cheat Xinhong Group of their money, but who knew that even Haitian Group could not beat him. The laws of human society were just that cruel. Although everyone seemed to be harmonious on the surface, when a huge prophet appeared, everyone would reveal their true colors. Ding Meng laughed even harder. It's obviously Xinhong Group's thing, but you insist that Haitian Group is taking it back. I admire you. The man in the suit still did not change his expression. You can name a price. As long as the price is right, we can trade fairly. Ding Meng did not even think about it. He said directly, okay, 100 billion star coins. If you can take it out, I will immediately sell it. The man in the suit looked directly at him. Do you think this price is right? Ding Meng laughed. Miss Su spent 90 billion to buy the silver core stone. I'm selling this for 100 billion, and you actually think it's not right? The man in the suit said, Miss Su is different from you. Ding Meng laughed even more mockingly. How is she different? Is it because of our different identities? The man in the suit was silent, but sometimes silence usually meant consent. This principle was there. What kind of person was Su Mengqing? What kind of power was behind her? How could a little interstellar refugee like you compare to her? Why don't you take a look at the 90 billion she spent? Whose money did that come from? Who did she buy the goods from? What right did you have to dare to name a high price of 100 billion? Ding Meng suddenly sighed. Your so-called fair trade seems to be just empty words. The man in the suit silently stretched out 3 fingers. Ding Meng asked curiously, how much? 30 million star coins, the man in the suit said calmly. The man in the suit said calmly, I can't go any higher. This price is more than what you paid previously. If this had been in the past, 30 million star coins would probably have made Ding Meng jump up in joy. However, now that he knew that this bag contained inverse source crystals, this price was not an offer to him, but an insult to his intelligence. Ding Meng also calmed down. Either 100 billion, not a single star coin less, or it's free. You can choose which method to buy. The man in the suit's face darkened. He also understood the underlying meaning of for free. It meant that if you had the ability, you could come and take it. If you could snatch it away, then it would indeed be free because you would have to pay with your life. Fourth young master also reminded you just now. You should know about the Haitian group, the man in the suit said in a low voice. Ding Meng said, of course I know. I also know that this belongs to the Starbao group. You think the Haitian group is stronger, right? The man in the suit completely stopped talking because there was no need to say anything else. Since this person dared to come to the extreme bandits' lair alone to torture them, he was not here to reason with them. It was also at this moment that a blue light flashed across the bridge. Hao Feng, who had been standing quietly beside the suited man, took the initiative to make a move. He shook his wrist without batting an eyelid. He was holding a short metal stick in his hand. This detail did not escape Ding Meng's detection, so with a shake of his wrist, the stick spun in a circle and flew over. This level of attack naturally could not get close to Ding Meng, but the originally short black stick suddenly made a whoosh sound when it was halfway through the flight. A slender light blue blade stretched out from the end of the stick. It looked a bit like a straight long sword, but the tip of the sword was a large and sharp prism. Just looking at the shape of the sword, one could feel a murderous aura. The blade of the sword was crystal blue and clear, as if it was wrapped in a faint layer of energy. It looked like an energy sword, but in fact, it was a sharp weapon made of special materials. The short stick turned out to be a sword hilt. At the end of the hilt, a blade of the same shape popped out, but this blade was much shorter. When this strange blue sword flew out in circles, Ding Meng felt something strange. His body suddenly became heavy. Little Rascal suddenly said, that guy is a fusion-type origin ability user. Fusion-type origin ability users were also a branch of gravity. Just like Yin Jie, whom he had met in Flying Star City. They both used their own origin ability to manipulate the environment around them. However, Yin Jie used the wind, while the man in the suit used the material around him. Why did Ding Meng feel that his body had become heavier? That was because the other party had already released origin energy in the surrounding area, creating a force field that squeezed the material around the bridge and increased its density, thus increasing the gravity. Once the gravity increased, a person's speed would become much slower. As such, Ding Meng was almost unable to dodge this sword. He felt like he had forcefully taken a step to the side, but in reality, he had only moved slightly to the side. The blue sword slashed past the base of his ear. As soon as the sword slashed past, Hao Feng's figure appeared behind him like a ghost. He reached out to grab the sword hilt and smashed the back of Ding Meng's head with the other end. This move was both fast and fierce. In fact, he was much faster than a normal light-speed warrior. Just based on the strength and the transient steps technique, Hao Feng's strength could be said to be far above Lu Ming and the other pirate leaders. Ding Meng didn't turn around, nor did he have the time to turn around. He pressed down with his left hand, and the ancient sword at his waist rose up behind him. The scabbard seemed to have grown eyes as it blocked the other party's strange attack. However, at this moment, Ding Meng betrayed himself. The suited man's palms attacked slowly with a very gentle hand gesture, as if he was holding up two invisible energy. Boom, boom, boom. A muffled sound rang out, and the bridge actually broke into 3 sections. The section in the middle was where Ding Meng was, and the huge broken bridge crashed into the lake. Ding Meng couldn't avoid falling, but Hao Feng also jumped down. In midair, he became one with his sword, and the blue sword pierced through the top of Ding Meng's head at a 90-degree angle. It was fine if this person didn't make a move, but once he did, every move he made was extremely fierce and murderous, as if he had a deep grudge against you. Due to the increased gravity, the falling speed was also especially fast. Ding Meng, along with the bridge, crashed into the lake with a splash, and the calm surface of the lake immediately rippled. However, Hao Feng's attack was still above Ding Meng's head. His falling speed didn't decrease, but instead increased, as if he wasn't affected by the lake's buoyancy at all. He was well versed in the way of the speed of light, and that was to kill in one go with a spur of energy. Seeing that his boots were about to touch the rocks at the bottom of the lake, Ding Meng didn't have time to adjust. He simply leaned back and caught the sword with his bare hands. His palms fiercely clasped together, and the tip of the prismatic sword was only a few centimeters away from his chest. At this moment, the speed of the water at the bottom of the lake suddenly increased, and it spun rapidly around Hao Feng's body. This was clearly the suited man helping him from above, using the speed of the water's rotation to increase the guiding force. Looking from the broken bridge, a huge whirlpool had formed in the center of the lake, and Hao Feng was constantly pressing down. Ding Meng's boots had completely crushed the rocks beneath them, sinking into the depths of the mud at the bottom of the lake. It was enough to show that the origin ability of these two fellows was quite astonishing when stacked together. Actually, Hao Feng was even more shocked in his heart. Previously, when he saw Ding Meng torture and kill Lu Ming, he didn't think much of it. Now that he was personally dealing with Ding Meng, he had a new understanding of Ding Meng. This brat was still able to maintain his center of gravity without changing under such heavy pressure. Furthermore, his ice blue crystal sword couldn't stab down any further. The sword's body was rebounding with an extremely hot energy, causing it to float upwards instead. Not even 10 seconds later, Hao Feng really couldn't hold on any longer. He flipped over and floated upwards. Halfway through this somersault, he disappeared. 20 to 30 doppelgangers of Afterimage attacked from all directions at the same time. The bottom of the lake was instantly filled with bursts of blue light, and sword shadows were everywhere. Under this kind of environment, it was truly difficult to distinguish the real body. In fact, Ding Meng didn't even bother to distinguish between the doppelgangers. With a whoosh, he pulled out his ancient sword and used night fighting all directions. The sword light formed a circle of dark golden light that spread out in all directions. Ding, 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 ding. All of the doppelgangers' weapons left their hands and retreated one after another. The mirror images slowly disappeared into the deep water. However, Hao Feng still didn't give up. His real body returned above Ding Meng's head and once again used the same trick, stabbing his sword straight at Ding Meng's head. "You're still coming? Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old kid?" Ding Meng was still angry at himself for being careless and falling into the suited man's trap. At this moment, when he saw Hao Feng using the same trick again, he didn't even think about it. He circulated his origin energy and furiously slashed upwards with his sword. The calm surface of the lake suddenly exploded with a boom sound, and a wave tens of meters high surged up. Amidst the splashing water, Hao Feng's body was thrown onto the bridge. Chapter 247. As he flew to the gap in the bridge, Hao Feng's entire body felt sore and numb. It was an indescribable feeling of discomfort. He was certain that his sword had not hit Ding Meng. Instead, it was Ding Meng's sword that had landed on his sword. A ferocious force had sent him flying backwards. He felt as if the origin energy in his body had flowed backwards. This guy is no longer below a mid-level war venerable. Hao Feng's voice actually trembled a little. He and the man in the suit had fought against many powerful opponents for Chu Zhongyu, but they had never seen such a young mid-level war venerable with such a deep foundation. Regardless of Ding Meng's true strength, just his foundation alone was unreasonably solid. However, the person who answered him was not the man in the suit. Instead, it was a silver Tyrell armor, holding a blood-red energy sword. He stood majestically by the broken bridge, his voice cold and emotionless. The result will be the same. The armor scanning system had already locked onto the opponent's position. Ding Meng had already walked out of the lake and arrived at the beach under the bridge. The soaking wet Ding Meng did not get on the bridge. Instead, he sat down cross-legged by a grove of coconut trees. Then, he took off the dazzling gold backpack from his shoulder and placed it on the ground in front of him. Finally, he closed his eyes and rested. Hao Feng was curious. What was this guy doing? Was he giving up on resisting? "No, this guy is smart," the man in the suit said quietly. "Let's go down as well. The show has just begun." The steel wings on Tyrell's back rotated. 6 streaks of crystal flames shot out of them as they rose into the air. They wobbled as they floated toward the open space by the beach. It was not until Hao Feng reached the beach that he sensed the abnormality. 3 abnormally powerful origin energy fluctuations came from the depths of the grove of coconut trees. The man in the suit stood about 50 meters away from Ding Meng and activated the armor's loudspeaker. "Everyone, is there any point in being secretive?" Suddenly, a strange laughter that was neither male nor female rang out in the forest. This voice was obviously synthesized by an electronic system. I was just quietly starting up part of the engine, and you actually found out. Haitian Group is really rich. They even modified Tyrell's detection system. In the forest, the sound of stiff footsteps could be heard. Not long after, the person finally walked out. It was indeed a battle armor. The appearance of this battle armor was mighty and domineering. It looked like a strange bird standing up. The strange bird's body was not huge. On the contrary, its limbs were very slender. However, this battle armor held a unique alloy shield in its hand. This red and white shield was about the same height as the 6-meter-long battle armor. There were also various firearms and cannons installed on it. Little Rascal immediately explained, "This is the 7th-generation product of the Holy Grail Federation, Hercules. It said that Shenghao Corporation is still in the process of developing it. I didn't expect to see it here. In fact, just below the shield was a logo of 3 coins stacked together. That was the logo of Shenghao Corporation. Therefore, everyone present should have thought of Hu Chengji, the representative of Shenghao Corporation in the hall during the day. He definitely would not give up so easily. This battle armor in front of them was obviously here for the inverse source crystal. However, Hercules' scanning eyes were looking in another direction. On the other side of the beach, There was also a battle armor floating lightly with crystal flames on the soles of its feet. Completely different from Hercules, this battle armor was a small one, only 3 meters tall. It looked like a human, and it was in the shape of a woman. Its slender waist, slender arms, slender legs. Its whole body seemed to be cast with a special purple-red material. If there was anything special about it, first of all, it was that it did not have a face. Its face seemed to be a mask made up of 2 purple-red crystals. Just looking at its face alone was particularly frightening. Secondly, its shoulders, elbows, knees, feet, and other key positions were equipped with half-meter-long metal barbs. The most eye-catching thing was its arms. The arms were completely connected to its weapons. The weapons were 2 thin and long steel thorns. When the arms hung down, the thorns almost touched the ground. This time, Ding Meng did not need Little Rascal to remind him. He already knew the name of this battle armor, Nemesis. Nemesis, Hercules, and Tyrell's technological devices and many functions could not be compared, but among the 6th-generation battle armors, it had a very outstanding design. The source core installed inside had undergone a special polymerization process, so the amount of energy injected into it was much higher than that of other battle armors. In other words, the strength of Nemesis depended entirely on the strength of the soldier. It was difficult for an ordinary origin ability user to resist Hercules and Tyrell with this battle armor, but if it was driven by an expert, it might not be a one-sided battle. Therefore, Nemesis floated quietly on the beach. The man in the suit and the pilot of Hercules did not look down on it at all. Hercules' strange voice sounded again. "Mr. Guan, your Mr. Liu has been killed. Are you still reluctant to part with him?" On the side of the woods, a huge battle armor walked out with heavy mechanical steps. Its shape was similar to the Blackstone Knight that Ding Meng had used, but its arms were in the shape of a cannon barrel, and its palm was the round muzzle. The energy flow was constantly changing color. The quality of this battle armor was slightly inferior. It was a 5th-generation long-range battle armor called Metal Maniac. When Ding Meng dealt with Lu Ming, Guan Bai, who had been knocked down, slipped away quietly. No one knew where he had equipped this metal madman and returned. Of course, this did not escape Ding Meng's perception, and he did not care. Thinking back, he had the ability to knock down Ren Zhan's Hercules, let alone this 5th-generation product. Now, the 4 battle armors had formed a circle. Although the circle was a little big, Ding Meng was trapped in it. Hao Feng suddenly understood why Ding Meng closed his eyes to rest. Obviously, he had sensed the enemy nearby. Since he could not run away, he might as well sit down and see what they were going to do. Guan Bai was indeed shocked by Ding Meng's strength, but he knew the importance of the inverse crystal. After paying such a high price, he could not let it fall into the hands of others. In fact, he had another plan. Now that Mao Zhan and Hu Biao were useless, and Lu Ming had been crushed by Ding Meng, as long as he killed Ding Meng, he could naturally take over the extreme bandit army. He was the second in command, and he believed that no one on Cypress Planet would be dissatisfied with him. However, when he came back from the warehouse with the battle armor, he found that the situation had developed into this. It was as difficult as climbing the sky for a metal maniac to snatch the backpack from Hercules, Nemesis, and the Tyrell battle armor. However, what he feared most happened. Just as he was thinking about countermeasures, Ding Meng opened his eyes, stood up, and kicked the backpack. "Since you want this thing, I'll give it to you." His kick was quite insidious. The backpack swayed in the air in a parabola and fell in the direction of the coconut grove where Guan Bai was. With this toss, it was impossible for the other families to stand still. The man in the suit didn't even think before flying straight into the forest. Hercules was not slow either. He tiptoed lightly on the ground, and the battle armor flew into the air like a bird. The Tyrell battle armor was obviously powerful. The energy sword in its hand danced in the air, wrapped the backpack in it, and then pulled it back. Hercules seemed to have seen through the intention of the man in the suit. Before the battle armor flew close, the shield was deformed and cracked, revealing a square metal body with 20 or 30 tiny muzzles. Rows of crescent-shaped energy cannons were fired. The trajectories of these cannonballs were extremely unique. They did not fly in a straight line. Instead, they flew in different directions like fireworks. If he tried to take them head-on, he would have to sacrifice his warframe. Therefore, the man in the suit decided to retreat halfway through his dance. These shells whizzed toward Building 4 on the bridge. About 2 seconds later, the building was filled with crackling sounds. Countless flames gushed out from the floors. The entire 20th floor was blown to pieces, and Building 4 was set ablaze. The man in the suit moved, and the backpack fell toward Guanbai. Guanbai was overjoyed. She stretched out her mechanical arm to catch it, but a purple light flashed in front of her. After a shadow passed by, the backpack was gone. Taking a closer look, the nemesis had picked up the backpack on its steel spikes. It was so fast that even Hao Feng was not as fast as it. As soon as the backpack was in its hand, the nemesis did not stop. It rushed toward Hercules. Its movements were very elegant, as if it was dancing. After a few ups and downs, it was in front of Hercules. It raised its hand and stabbed. The steel spike had no light, and the whole space was in darkness. This silent stab was simply impossible to guard against. But Hercules was able to guard against it. He raised his hand, and a giant shield was erected in front of him. Sparks flew from the steel spike. However, the nemesis did not intend to attack at all. The steel spike slid down the shield, and with the momentum, it somersaulted a few times in the air and flipped over Hercules' head. But Hercules remained in a defensive posture because Guanbai's muzzle had been fully charged. The muzzle of the muzzle made a strange sound, and a 3-meter-thick fiery red energy cluster sprayed straight at Hercules. Boom! The cluster beam struck the shield like a bolt of lightning. Surprisingly, the shield did not explode. Its whole body turned fiery red. All the energy hit the shield, forming a semi-arc coating. It was unclear whether the energy was burning the shield, absorbing the energy, or burning the shield. In any case, Hercules' armor behind the shield was unharmed. The soldier inside the armor was still talking in a strange tone. "Mr. Guan, it's not easy to get a metal maniac. Don't you think it's a pity to destroy it like this?" Chapter 248. On the island in the middle of the dark lake, the thick energy beams were still being released. From afar, it looked like a red shockwave, covering the entire lake in a layer of fiery red color. Under such a fierce bombardment, the Hercules armor did not retreat. Instead, it slowly moved forward with its shield raised. This was the new generation of armor developed by the Shanghao group. Its defensive capabilities were completely beyond Guanbai's imagination. But he did not dare to stop firing. If he did, the enemy would appear in front of him in the blink of an eye and kill him mercilessly. But if he continued firing like this, the energy beam would go out in 30 seconds and enter automatic charging mode. What should he do? Just as he was panicking, the Vengeance Goddess, who had already flipped away, performed a series of difficult maneuvers on the beach. Since the Tyrell armor on the side was locked onto the backpack, the energy greatsword chased after the Vengeance Goddess, slashing and slashing at the Vengeance Goddess. The sand on the beach was also constantly exploding, sending sand waves several meters high into the air. The Nemesis armor was smart. It seemed to know the power of the Tyrell armor and did not dare to face it head-on. After dodging a few rounds, it simply waved the steel spike in its hand, and the glittering backpack flew in a parabola in the air. This time, it did not land on Guanbai, but on Ding Meng. The backpack flew back in the same way it flew out. With a click, the backpack returned to Ding Meng's hand. Ding Meng's first reaction after taking over the backpack was not to dodge the Tyrell armor falling from the sky. Instead, he turned around and ran in the opposite direction. Ding Meng's movements were no weaker than the Vengeance's dodging. He dashed towards the side of the forest and leaped forward. After rolling a few times on the ground, he got up and somersaulted forward. His boots landed on a tree trunk, and he took a few big strides, running in an arc between the tree trunks. It was exactly the body movement that he used to dodge the particle laser cannons of the Mantis armor in the Flying Star City. This time was no exception. However, it was not laser cannons that were chasing after Hercules. Instead, it was two thin white energy beams that shot out from the woodpecker-like head of Hercules. The energy beams cut through the ground, rocks, and tree trunks like real lasers. Anything that came into contact with the energy beams would shatter into pieces and burn into black smoke. Ding Ming stopped running after flashing dozens of meters away. He simply threw his backpack forward. Everyone present knew that the backpack was now a bag of explosives. Whoever caught it would immediately become the target of public criticism. This was especially true for the Hercules armor. It was obviously the most powerful of the four armors. Ding Ming had thrown Guanbai in the direction he was aiming at. Guanbai was still casting the shockwave, so there was no way she could free her hands to catch the backpack. In fact, it was impossible for him to catch the backpack even if he wanted to. A red sword shadow swept down from the sky, and Metal Maniac quickly dodged to the side. Tyrell's slash seemed to be aimed at the man's head, but in fact, halfway through, the energy sword changed from a diagonal slash to an upward slash. To be honest, this was not a profound move, but for a soldier equipped with armor, it required a high degree of proficiency. At the very least, when the man in the suit was piloting the Tyrell armor, it would not be lower than the difficulty level. There was no way Guanbai could dodge it. The sword cut open a hole in the right leg of the Metal Maniac. The leg made of alloy seemed to have been drawn with a dark watercolor pen. The line quickly heated up and glowed. A moment later, the right leg was directly melted. Metal Maniac quickly knelt on one knee with a crack. Guanbai was smart. Seeing that the battle was not going to end well, he simply stopped shooting and gave up fighting for the backpack. He opened the emergency exit on the back of the armor and jumped down. He had no choice. The two soldiers from Haitian Group and Xinghao Group were too fierce. He had to abandon the armor and run. In the darkness, the purple light suddenly flashed. Guanbai's running feet suddenly left the ground and kicked wildly in the air. After a few kicks, he stopped because he could not move anymore. The steel spike of Nemesis pierced through his back and skewered him directly, like skewering a mutton skewer with a steel stake. It was direct, cruel, and ruthless. This soldier in the armor did not seem to be special, but its speed was amazing. Cough, cough, ugh. A large amount of blood oozed from Guanbai's mouth, and the strange sound coming from his throat sounded quite horrifying. Vengeance, on the other hand, didn't care about this. He waved his hand and nailed Guanbai to the ground. Another steel spike pierced Guanbai's face. This soldier seemed to have a blood feud with Guanbai as he stabbed Guanbai several times with the steel spike. The pirate leader of the Extreme Bandits ended up the same as Lu Ming. His head instantly turned into meat paste. After getting rid of Guanbai, Vengeance's figure flashed again and disappeared again. On the other side of the open space, the Hercules armor and the Tyrell armor were engaged in heated battle. The battle was no longer a chase or a competition of technological devices. The two armors' moves were methodical. The energy sword of the man in the suit was like chopping firewood. Every move was aimed at the head of the Tyrell armor, and the Hercules armor raised its shield to block the attack. People who did not know the truth would think that the two soldiers were quite naive, like children fighting. But in Ding Ming's eyes, the man in the suit seemed to have a spirit. This spirit said, "No matter how good the armor of Xinghao Group is, I must make you kneel down." It had to be said that sometimes in a battle, one needed this kind of incomparably fierce aura to fight to the death, especially when facing a strong enemy. Once you had the thought of retreating, fear, or doubt in your heart, your mentality would change, and the advantage you originally held would become a disadvantage. At this moment, the soldier in Hercules' armor was in such a state of mind. Every time the opponent's sword hit the shield, a large number of strong electric sparks would appear, accompanied by a large amount of steel slag. When a man in the suit hit the shield for the 20th time, the crystal processor system indicated that the damage of the shield had reached 46%. If this continued, the shield would be destroyed. In fact, he did not know that this Xinghao golden shield was made of a rare platinum alloy, which made it extraordinarily hard. The energy sword could not withstand the brute force of the man in the suit. At this moment, the man in the suit was using a backup energy source to forcibly inject energy into the giant sword. Of course, he did not have to be so extravagant, but the energy sword was usually the strongest in the first strike. The more it was used, the weaker the energy would be. If the energy was not injected, the luster and brightness of the sword would slowly fade. Sooner or later, the opponent would discover this. While the two of them were consuming each other's energy, Ding Ming, who was able to catch his breath, slowly stood under a tree. Then, he exerted a little force with his eyes. The backpack in the distance miraculously bounced out of the grass and flew back to his hand as if it had grown eyes. When he put the backpack on his shoulder again, a black shadow fell from the tree, and the grass was once again illuminated by a blue light. Last time, the man in the suit helped him by casting a force field. But this time, it was impossible for Hao Feng to succeed in a sneak attack. The blue-eyed sword stabbed straight at Ding Ming, and he only took a small step back. At the same time, he drew his sword with both hands and slashed horizontally. He was not slashing at the man, but at the sword. Clang! Hao Feng and his sword spun a few times in the air, but his reaction was still very fast. His body flashed as he spun, and he used transient steps to teleport himself back to the top of the tree. Unfortunately, Ding Ming did not stop after the horizontal slash. Instead, he quickly changed the sweeping motion into a backhand lift. At least this backhand lift was clearly seen from the corner of Hao Feng's eyes. He was also mentally prepared because he had previously seen Ding Ming's long-distance cannon force. Cannon force could be released through fists and palms, but he did not think that Ding Ming could use a weapon to do so. The ancient sword would definitely not be able to do so, because the backhand lift was fake and the use of telekinesis was real. The long sword flew in circles towards the top of the tree, and the branches and leaves along the way were all cut into pieces. Even these pieces were stained with the dark golden luster of the ancient sword. Hao Feng was shocked. He did not have time to think at all. He quickly leaned back and fell from the top of the tree. This was the most primitive way to fall, and it was to avoid Ding Ming's sword. However, Ding Ming himself was standing straight where he fell, looking up at him coldly, as if waiting for him to come. At this moment, all the hair on Hao Feng's body stood on end. He had already smelled a huge danger from Ding Ming's indifferent and cold eyes. His opponent's fatal blow was probably not from the sword, but from what was waiting for him on the ground. With another whoosh, Hao Feng, who was falling from the sky, disappeared. Once again, he split into 23 clones and circled around the trunk of the tree. This was Hao Feng's limit, and he even used Phantom of the Phantom to become invisible. His entire body was in a posture with his hands behind his back, and he was firmly stuck to the trunk of the tree. He knew that Ding Ming's strength was actually stronger than his, but so what? As long as his real body was not discovered, he was confident that he would be able to exhaust Ding Ming. At the same time, the man in the suit on the grass would defeat the steel freak from Shenghao Group sooner or later. At that time, with the combined strength of the two of them, Ding Ming would still not be able to escape. As for that vengeance, how could she be a match for the Tyrell armor? Therefore, Hao Feng firmly stuck to the trunk and did not move, because he had calculated the score very clearly. Suddenly, he heard a light, knock sound coming from the trunk. This sound was like someone knocking on a door. Usually, there would be several consecutive knocks, but this sound only came once. He noticed it, but it was too late. He suddenly felt a chill on his back, and the person who knocked on the door seemed to have knocked lightly on his back. When he realized that something was wrong, a hot and sharp dark golden sword tip drilled out of his chest. He lowered his head and glanced at the sword tip. Then he opened his mouth wide. He didn't know if it was out of shock or if he wanted to shout. In any case, no sound came out. He still couldn't figure out what was going on. He only felt that the sword was like a red-hot soldering iron, melting everything that could exist in his body. Chapter 249. Behind the tree, Ding Ming's figure leaped into the air. He reached out to grab the falling sword and stabbed it without hesitation. The sword pierced through the tree trunk and Hao Feng's chest at the same time. There was nothing special about the sword except that the timing was perfect. Even if it was a second faster or a second slower, it would not have achieved such an effect. Hao Feng was still stuck to the tree trunk, but unfortunately, he could no longer move. Even in death, he could not figure out how Ding Meng could pinpoint his position so accurately. The sword was pulled back, and a large amount of blood sprayed out from the wound on Hao Feng's heart. This time, he still did not fall to the ground, because when he fell, the dark golden sword flashed a few times in the air, like a meteor streaking across the sky. In the blink of an eye, Hao Feng's limbs were severed. Then his whole body was cut in half by Ding Meng's sword. Pata! 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 The severed limbs and pieces of flesh were finally scattered in the grass. There was not even a complete corpse. Ding Meng, who was standing under the tree, suddenly raised his hand and grabbed the blue crystal ice sword that fell from the sky. He was still expressionless. In his mind, although the extreme pirates were despicable, they were just executioners. The Haitian group was the real culprit. Since they did not leave a complete corpse on planet KV-303, then he would cut them into pieces as well. How could the man in the suit not have sensed such a large-scale killing? In his mind, although Hao Feng was only a beginner war reverend, he would not be killed by Ding Meng in an instant. However, at that moment, Ding Meng's origin ability aura suddenly skyrocketed. The control panel of the armor even sounded an alarm. Ding Meng's current origin ability index was 367,889 points. This Ding Meng was actually an intermediate war reverend. At this moment, the man in the suit felt a little confused. According to the information in the group's database, Ding Meng's strength was only an advanced thermodynamic system warrior. But now, was the group's information wrong? Or had Ding Meng's strength improved by leaps and bounds recently? If it was the latter, then the man in the suit felt that he could crush the armor and eat it. A mid-level war elder in his 20s was not a rare thing. But how long had it been? In just half a year, Ding Meng had advanced from an advanced warrior to an intermediate war elder. His path of cultivation had taken him only 1 year to reach a height that ordinary origin ability users would never be able to reach in their entire lives. From a data point of view, the man in the suit who was equipped with the armor currently had an origin ability index of 500,023 points. His index was higher than Ding Meng's by a large margin, but if they really fought, he did not have full confidence that he would be able to defeat Ding Meng. While he was distracted, the shield of Hercules armor came. Boom! The Tyrol battle armor was sent flying by the impact. The soldier of Hercules finally caught his breath and was about to raise a shield again when a cold wind blew from behind. In the cold wind, 2 long steel thorns were aimed at his back. The nemesis was also very cunning. Every time, she would attack when there was a flaw, and she would specifically attack your weak spot. Come! The soldier of Hercules suddenly roared. With a crisp sound, the waist of the armor was pierced by the thorns, creating a large number of sparks. No one expected the soldier to take the 2 thorns head-on. Of course, there was a corresponding price to pay for a successful sneak attack. The Hercules armor did not even turn around. Its mechanical arm flipped backward and hit the head of the nemesis with a bang. The nemesis was sent flying like a piece of paper. The shield did not stop its attack. The cannon at the top opened up again and shot out a huge fiery red energy shell. It hit the nemesis's shoulder without any deviation. Boom! A sonorous and powerful sound rang out. The light pupil in midair spread out rings of light in all directions. This explosion directly blew the vengeance goddess out of sight. The ground on the grassland shook, and sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The shockwave was so strong that it was difficult to open one's eyes. Even Ding Meng's telekinesis vision felt that the light was quite harmful to her eyes. But how could the man in the suit let go of such a great opportunity? The soles of the Tyrol battle armor spewed out crystal flames, and the armor slowly rose vertically into the air. The 6-feathered steel wings on his back began to slowly rotate this time. This rotation gave the impression that the steel wings were like snowflake-shaped sickles, emitting strong light of 6 different colors. The energy of the soldier and the energy of the armor itself seemed to be injected into them. Sure enough, the steel wings gradually detached from the armor and flew into the air, spinning rapidly. They looked like a six-colored sickle, but also like a demonic mass of chaos. The man in the suit held the sword in one hand and slammed the hilt with the other. The energy sword pierced through the center of the sickle, bringing the mass of chaos with it toward the grassland below. Needless to say, this must be the ultimate move of the Tyrell battle armor. The man in the suit was going all out to kill the enemy. After all, the biggest threat here was the Shung Hao group's armor. The appearance of this mass of chaos lit up the entire island in the middle of the lake. The soldier of Hercules seemed to know that there was no way to dodge this move, so he mustered up his courage. Crystal flames spewed out from the soles of his armor, and his whole body rose from the ground. He raised his giant shield and slammed into the enemy head-on. Even Ding Meng, who was watching from afar, was dazzled by this suicidal attack. Ding Meng had always been a straightforward person, but this guy was even more ruthless. He actually dared to charge straight at him, as if he didn't care about his own life. As soon as the mass of chaos hit the shield, the energy sword stabbed into it. The shield did not shatter. Instead, a large amount of pink plating appeared on the surface. Apparently, the backup energy of the Hercules battle armor had been used up. The energy sword melted into nothingness in a sea of red. Then the steel wing spun down. This time, the shield was obviously unable to withstand it. The steel wings were like propellers, crushing the shield bit by bit. Countless remnants of light scattered in all directions. It was a spectacular sight. In the end, the shield was completely shattered. The steel wings crushed the mechanical arm of the battle armor, but the soldier of Hercules' battle armor flew to the front of the man in the suit. His purpose was simple and crude. Since you want to blow me up, I will drag you down with me. In the sky, a gigantic pupil of light suddenly appeared. This couldn't be called a pupil of light at all. It was more like an energy ball that was constantly expanding. The ball was constantly changing color, and energy currents as thick as an arm were flowing on the surface of the ball. This was clearly a super energy bomb that was in the process of fusion. Sure enough, a moment later, the whole world turned into a bright blank. There was nothing but blank. Nothing could be seen, including Ding Meng. This level of explosion was not something that human retinal nerves could withstand. Although he couldn't see with his eyes, he could hear wave after wave of violent explosions. It was like waves crashing onto a beach. Just as one wave receded, the next wave came with an even more ferocious momentum. The rumbling of the explosions was endless, making their scalps tingle. After an unknown period of time, the explosion gradually stopped, but the shaking of the earth and mountains still continued. The 4 buildings of the extreme pirate core collapsed. The 4 30-story buildings collapsed like building blocks, turning the circular square into a pile of ruins. As for the cross bridge, it had long disappeared, and a huge pit with a diameter of 50 meters appeared in the middle of the grassland. The Tyrell battle armor had already been disintegrated, and the suit man's entire body was charred black. He was also smoking as he lay in a pile of rubble, panting heavily. The only reason he was able to survive was because of his origin energy foundation. Otherwise, the disintegration of the battle armor would have turned him into ashes. In fact, he was regretting that he had used his ultimate move on impulse. He did not expect the soldiers of Shung Hao Group to be so fearless of death. Now, on the beach in the distance, the vengeance had also fallen. Although her entire left arm was blown off and her mask was shattered, the red mask was still flickering from time to time, proving that she still had energy reserves. Moreover, another person with unkempt hair and dirty face crawled out from the pile of dirt outside the crater. Ding Meng was perfectly fine. At the very least, Ding Meng was still holding on to Hao Feng's ice-blue crystal sword. Even after such an explosion, she did not let go of the weapon. Only now did the man in the suit understand why Lan Bing valued Ding Meng so much. Or rather, it was not because she valued him, but because she was afraid of him. However, The strange thing was that Ding Meng did not move at all. His eyes were looking into the depths of the pit. There was a strange popping sound coming from the bottom of the pit, as if some monster was about to break out of the ground. 10 seconds later, there was another explosion at the bottom of the pit. Countless pieces of soil and grass were blown up. A scene that made the man in the suit's hair stand on end appeared. The Hercules armor flew up from the ground and stood steadily in the middle of the pit. The mechanical right arm of the armor had been severed at the elbow, and the shoulder, lower abdomen, and front chest were all damaged to varying degrees. But the whole body was covered by a circle of ghostly blue energy shield. In such a terrible and violent explosion, the Hercules armor did not disintegrate. The man in the suit's heart sank. It was said that this was the era of origin energy and technology, and this sentence was not wrong at all. The Warframe operators of Shunghao Group had developed something with such a terrible defensive ability. No wonder the other party dared to come out and rob them so blatantly. They had the confidence to do so. The armor raised its head and laughed. The soldier's voice was still strange. Ha 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 ha. With a few broken things of your Haitian group, you call them armors? Naive. The man in the suit also showed a cruel smile. Go ahead and kill me. But remember, no matter where you run to in the future, Mr. Chu will hunt you down and kill you. I'm not interested in you. Don't overestimate yourself. The soldier was too lazy to touch him. Instead, he slowly turned to face Ding Meng in the distance. Little rascal seemed to be sucking in a cold breath. This guy's origin energy index was as high as 693,301 before, and now he still has 538,890 points. What material is this armor made of? Xiao AI said, the structure of the material is very complicated. At present, I can only analyze that it is at least 128 yuan super alloy, mixed with platinum group metals and first-grade Gaiyuan crystals. However, there are more complicated components that I can't analyze in a short time. Ding Meng took a deep breath. He knew that the Hercules armor was the most difficult enemy to deal with. Chapter 250. The island was once again plunged into darkness, and the wind by the lake became cold. Ding Meng let out a long sigh in the cold wind. He suddenly opened his mouth and said something very strange. You really are a test subject. The soldier in the Hercules armor seemed to be stunned. Ding Meng sighed. A normal armor that can increase an origin ability user's index by 3 times is already considered an excellent product. But this armor of yours can actually increase an origin ability user's index by 7 times. It's really a rare high-tech product. The soldier's voice was full of pride. Since you know, you should also know that resistance is futile. Ding Meng did not answer him. He continued. Do you know why I know that your armor has such an effect? The soldier was stunned again. Ding Meng slowly took 2 steps forward. It's very simple. Because you are a beginner war venerable, and your energy index is only about 100,000 points. The soldier's voice became cold. How do you know? Ding Meng sneered. You can pretend in front of them, but you can't pretend in front of me. Officer Bai, do you still want to continue using your strange voice? The soldier seemed to be silent. After a while, his voice turned into a male voice. Ding Meng, you'd better be sensible and take the initiative to give me that package. We can be considered to have a good relationship. If a talent like you has the opportunity to enter the Federation, all the major forces will fight for you. If you want, I could be your guide and recommend you to the Shunghao Group. You may not know about the Haitian Group, but as long as you are a person, you should know the strength of the Shunghao Group. This soldier was none other than Bai Yu, who had tricked Ding Meng, Dai Yi, and the others on the carrier in Meteor City and had stolen Nightmare's backpack. He did not appear in the venue at first. It was not until the Hercules armor was damaged that Bai Yu, who was inside the armor, was scanned with his telekinesis vision. Ding Meng laughed even more disdainfully. As I said before, the position of the Deputy Commander of the Green Arrow Corps is not low, and you betrayed the Dai family. I'm afraid that there must be a bigger force behind you. I didn't expect you to rely on the Shunghao Group. Bai Yu said proudly. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. You are a smart person, so I don't need to say more about this principle, right? Ding Ming said, you know the word good bird. Bird is a good word. At least it's not a human. It's a beast. Bala stared at him. What are you trying to say? Ding Ming said, I have my reasons for saying that you are not human. Bai forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and asked, what reason? Ding Ming said, I've been thinking about something. Your Hercules armor is said to be the 7th generation product being developed by the Holy Grail Federation. The Federation commissioned Shenghao Group to develop it. Bai said, so what? Ding Ming said, although I'm also a layman when it comes to armor, I still know one thing. A fully mass-produced armor needs to be tested, modified, and perfected at least thousands of times. It also needs to be tested many times by specialized soldiers. It will not be put into production until it's mature. You don't have to deny it. Your armor is definitely not a mature product. Bai could not deny it because he was one of the soldiers in charge of the trial. Ding Ming continued, it stands to reason that this kind of high-end armor is classified. Even if it's a trial, it should be done in an absolutely confidential place or inside the Kaja server. It's impossible to fly to outer space, especially to a place like Cypress Grove. Of course, you can also explain that the Shenghao group wants to see the actual combat results. Bai did not say anything. He once again had a new understanding of Ding Ming. Although this guy was usually cold and indifferent, he was actually very flexible and thought more clearly than anyone else. That's the problem. Ding Ming spread his hands and said, how can such a high-end product be tested by someone like you? If I were the boss of the Shenghao group, I would at least send someone at the combat master level to Cypress Grove. Bai snorted coldly and said, you think you're smart? Ding Ming said, since the Shenghao group knows about the existence of the inverse source crystal, they should understand that the Star Bao group will not come empty-handed. At the very least, they will send an expert to oversee the operation. Anyway, no matter what kind of person it is, it will not be someone with your strength to pilot the Hercules armor. No matter how unwilling Bai was to admit it, he had to agree with Ding Ming's analysis. If this semi-finished armor fell into the hands of the enemy, it would be a big joke. Ding Ming said, but you still came. I'm afraid there's only one explanation. That is, there's a big flaw in the Hercules armor. If there's a problem, the one who died is just an outsider, the deputy regimental commander of the Green Arrow Corps. Even if he dies, the Shenghao group won't suffer any loss. Anyway, they don't treat you as a human being. It's reasonable for me to say that you're not a human being. These words were a classic case of wild guesses and nonsense. It was purely based on skewed logic. However, this was also Ding Ming's psychological tactic. He was betting that Bai's defection back then was for glory and wealth. Along the way, Ding Ming had a certain understanding of traitors. Ji Ming was such a person when he was on the Songqing spaceship. However, Ji Ming was trained by Lan Bing to be an undercover agent in the Norse Empire for many years. He was fundamentally different from Bai. Bai's behavior was commonly known as leaving home halfway. In fact, who did not want glory and wealth? There were too many people like Bai in the world. They always thought that they could attract the attention of the higher-ups by groveling, currying favor, flattering, and doing whatever they could to get the attention of the higher-ups and finally embark on the road to success. Therefore, they did not hesitate to betray their former allies. When the benefits were big enough, they could even disown their own family. However, they forgot one thing. Their self-righteous behavior of enduring humiliation was a moral villain in the eyes of the people at the bottom of the hierarchy. Moreover, the so-called higher-ups also despised such people from the bottom of their hearts. Sometimes, slaves were essentially the same as animals. Do not expect others to treat you as a human being. For a large-scale organization like the Shenghao Group, when necessary, the priority would be to send the slaves and animals to their deaths. Who would be willing to sacrifice the elites? Anyone with a normal IQ would not do such a thing. Ding Ming's words indeed aroused Bai's anger. He could not help but curse. Bullsh**t. Who do you think you are? What do you know? Last time in the Flying Star City, I spared your life because I thought you were a talent. I didn't expect to run into you again this time. Do you think it's useful to talk so much? Ding Meng smiled and said, Then, do you think I will fall in the same place twice? Then go to hell. Bai said as he charged at Hao Run like a whirlwind. Ding Meng had only watched from afar before. Now that he was in close combat, he really understood the power of the Hercules armor. Although the battle armor had lost an arm and Sheng Hao's golden shield, the left hand was still there. Furthermore, the mechanical palm was deformed with a series of cracking sounds, and a huge cutter was flipped out from the inside. This thing was made up of many large and small high-frequency rotating saws. They were densely packed together and looked like an enlarged version of a cactus. No one dared to take this thing head-on. Ding Meng had to slide to the side. The huge saw hit the ground, and a stone the size of a tea table instantly turned into a puff of smoke. Bai Yu, who was equipped with the armor, was indeed fast. As soon as Ding Meng dodged, the saw quickly turned and chased after him as if it had eyes. No matter how he dodged, the saw would eventually cut him to death. Soon, a large number of coconut trees in the forest fell, and countless branches and weeds rose into the sky. The right hand of the armor was not really disabled. The cut at the elbow was also deformed, turning into a long and flat black energy pulse gun. The firing rate of the gun was not fast. Every 5 seconds, a long droplet-shaped energy bullet would shoot out. Although the bullet was small in size, its power was amazing because it did not hit a person, but the ground under Ding Meng's feet. As soon as the bullet touched the ground, it quickly turned into a circle of white light and spread out like a wave. The ground was clearly distorted into an S shape. The energy pulse gun created a shock effect, which interfered with Hao Ren's movement and footwork. To put it bluntly, Bai Yu's idea was the standard style of a light-speed assassin, to make it impossible for Hao Ren to fight back and kill him in one go. With his continuous smashing and shooting attacks, Ding Meng could only jump from tree to tree. However, this was not a solution because as the cutter continued to cut down tree after tree, Ding Meng would sooner or later fall into an awkward situation where there were no trees to use. Sure enough, after the armor cut down more than 40 coconut trees, the energy pulse gun finally stopped shooting at the ground and directly greeted Ding Meng. This shock did not have a direct killing effect, but when it exploded in the air, the energy flow it set off was quite fierce. If Hao Ren dodged with the flow, it would be fine, but if he went against the flow, his speed would be greatly reduced. Bai Yu obviously saw this point. After another bullet was fired, he chose to predict Ding Meng's movements in advance. He suddenly raised his fist and punched at Ding Meng's right side. This time, it was not a violent punch, but a sudden ejection of the large cutter from the armor. "Watch out!" Little rascal exclaimed. Ding Meng also noticed that something was wrong. When the cutter was in front of him, it suddenly exploded. Countless large and small gear saws scattered. From afar, it looked like a miniature force field. All the saws surrounded Ding Meng. Bai Yu smiled. "Go in peace. Dying in the hands of Hercules' armor is not a disgrace to your status." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a series of cha-cha-cha sounds, and all the saws closed in from all directions, converging on Ding Meng at the center. Clang! At the critical moment, a gold and diamond mirror image suddenly appeared and covered Ding Meng. As the gear saws rushed up, the mirror image's surface flashed with a strong light. Apparently, it was resisting the fierce attack. Ever since Ding Meng started practicing the Diamond Star technique, he had never felt more tired than this defense. These saws were really like countless strange insects gnawing at the surface of the origin power mirror image. Under the high-speed operation of the 6 origin points in his body, the origin power was still being drawn out to support the mirror image. Xiao AI said in a deep voice, "Don't overuse it. These saws are made of special materials. The diamond prism won't last for too long." Chapter 251. Bai Lu had obviously studied Ding Meng carefully. Although he did not know about the Diamond Star technique, This kind of diamond mirror image was nothing more than a defensive force field created by the external release of source energy. No matter how strong your source energy is, can it be stronger than my continuous supply of technological energy? While Bai Lu was still calculating the time, there was a sudden movement behind him. The ion-scanning eye on the armor had already detected it. Vengeance was quietly crawling on the ground. She also seized the opportunity and decisively leaped up. Like a slippery fish rising out of the water, the steel spike in her hand glowed with a strong purple light. Upon closer inspection, the shape of the steel spike had also changed. It had turned into a crescent-shaped scythe with a purple-red luster. If there were any Warframe masters present, they would be able to see that this weapon of vengeance was obviously made of rare good materials. Under normal conditions, it was very sharp. After being charged with energy, it could be used as an energy sword. It was double insurance when cutting through high-defense armor. Of course, the most important thing was the strength of the soldier himself. This soldier of vengeance was obviously very good at sneak attacks. When he swept across, he still chose to attack the back of Hercules' armor. Previously, Hercules' armor had been pierced by the steel spike once. This time, it was equivalent to a crescent-shaped blade slashing at the wound. BZZT, 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 BZZT. Another series of strong electric sparks flew. A large piece of steel slid down the back of Hercules' armor. However, when the body of the armor was already damaged, using the difficult move of fish leaping over the dragon gate was undoubtedly a no-holds-barred attack. It had completely exposed its back. Bai Lu was very angry to be attacked by this guy all the time. "Get out of here, you worm!" He turned halfway and swept his left leg backward. The goddess of vengeance's mask completely shattered with a bang, and her armor flew backward. Bai Lu then stepped forward and threw out another straight punch. The goddess of vengeance rolled and flew toward the beach. Go, go, go. 3 consecutive shots from the pulse gun hit the nemesis' chest, and the armor began to disintegrate in the air. When it landed on the beach, the beep, 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 beep sound could be heard clearly. The explosion happened in an instant. Bai Yu was also shocked by the situation. Hercules' cutter was made of platinum metal, but the ancient sword could cut it. What kind of sword was it? Ding Meng did not give Hercules a chance to guess. As soon as the cutter broke, Ding Meng leaped into the air and became one with his sword. The tip of his sword went straight for the head of the strange bird on Hercules' armor. His purpose was very straightforward. I have killed you. No matter how powerful your armor is, it is still a pile of scrap iron. Just as the tip of the sword was about to pierce through, Ding Meng sensed a strange energy emanating from the other party. Bang! The ghostly blue energy shield appeared again, wrapping the armor tightly like a crystal ball. When a sword hit the center of a shield, it was as if an electric current had hit it. The surface of the shield kept flickering, but the sword could not penetrate it at all. No matter how hard Ding Meng tried, the sword could not go any further. Instead, the shield seemed to have gathered a strong energy and suddenly knocked Ding Meng back. When Ding Meng landed on the ground, he felt that his wrist holding the sword was a little numb. Xiao AI said decisively, "This is the waveform energy defense matrix. This armor is equipped with high-quality artificial silver core stones. 6 origins will not be able to deal with it. The waveform energy defense matrix. To put it simply, this was an energy defense system that would only be installed on a spacecraft. Its function was not only to withstand all kinds of firepower attacks in space, but its more outstanding function was to analyze the composition of the enemy's attack and adopt different strategies to deal with it. It was usually difficult to install this kind of defense system on armor. It was not a technical problem, but a cost problem because the demand for silver core stones was too high. It was impossible to use the materials used to build airships to make armor, right? Even if it was possible to make armor, no one could afford it. Since this Hercules armor was equipped with a waveform energy defense matrix, the only explanation was not that the Shenghao group was rich, but that they had developed a technology to reduce the cost of artificial silver core stones. Sure enough, Bai Yu was already raising his head and laughing. Ding Meng, Ding Ming, I've already said that you're full of yourself. Do you still think that this warframe is flawed? I think you are the one with a problem. Ha ha! He did not laugh for too long because the internal system of the armor soon alerted him. Target is recharging. Current energy index, 459,299. What? Baiyu wondered if the system had a problem. How could Ding Ming's energy index increase after being beaten up like this? He carefully observed the scanning eye. Ding Ming, who was directly opposite him, had already closed her eyes. She was holding her sword with both hands and facing the sky at an angle. This posture was indeed a bit strange. When he looked down at the control panel again, he could not believe his eyes because the data displayed by the system was constantly rising. 517,333, 576,651, 637,724, 709,011, 772,328. The energy index was increasing at a rate of about 50,000 points per second until it reached 913,166 points before it stopped. Even though Baiyu was experienced and knowledgeable, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. He had imagined all kinds of unexpected situations, but no matter which one, it was not as exaggerated as the scene in front of him. Ding Ming's energy index doubled in just 10 seconds. This goddamn guy was actually a high-level Origin War warrior. At this moment, Baiyu actually felt a sense of awe. A 21-year-old high-level war warrior. Ding Ming was not scary in the present, but in the future. The future of this kind of person was impossible to predict. He was just like the legendary geniuses of the Federation, and he was also an interstellar refugee. Who would dare to believe it? When Baiyu raised his head again, he noticed that Ding Ming's dark golden ancient sword had turned fiery red. This was because an extremely dense amount of heat energy had been poured into the sword. The sword seemed to be emitting waves of heat in all directions. These waves of heat caused the air to distort and blur. The scattered branches on the ground were actually set ablaze. The raging flames illuminated Ding Ming's face, which was full of fighting spirit. This was the first time that all 7 origin points of the Diamond Star technique had been activated at the same time. The explosive power was not something that someone like Baiyu could imagine. However, Baiyu was not an idiot. He instantly determined that Ding Ming's explosive use of energy would not last long, so he decided to take the initiative to attack. Baiyu's move was very simple. He threw a straight punch. It looked like a punch, but in fact the blue light shield of the wavy energy defense array had shrunk. The main energy was gathered on his fist, and it was like a crystal ball that crashed toward Ding Ming. The power created by this technological energy was not something that ordinary Origin ability users could withstand. Baiyu's attack was like a thunderstorm. With another chi sound, Ding Ming held his sword horizontally in front of his chest. The light shield was firmly blocked. Just now, when the sword pierced through, the light barrier was like an extremely hard layer that blocked the sword tip. Now that it was the ancient sword's turn to defend, the light barrier seemed to have turned into a bubble, softly colliding with the sword tip. Although the bubble didn't burst, anyone could tell that Baiyu couldn't even shake the sword in the slightest. F***CK. Baiyu was also shocked. This was a super polymeric crystal energy of up to 700,000 tons, which was equivalent to an energy with an energy index of nearly 600,000. It couldn't even move an ancient sword bit. In fact, it was not the ancient sword that blocked his light shield, but Ding Ming's entire body was now covered by an exquisite crown mirror image. This was an advanced defensive force field that could only be produced when one cultivated to the 7th origin point. However, something even stranger was still to come. Ding Ming's entire body was gradually covered by a layer of pure white brilliance. This layer of energy was definitely the release of source energy, but the light was getting stronger and stronger. Gradually, Ding Ming's entire body turned into a human-shaped light, and his original face could not be seen. Not good. Baiyu had already felt a huge sense of danger. It was clear that this brat was going to use his ultimate skill. A fierce person who had cultivated to the level of a high-level war elder would usually have a legendary ultimate move and would definitely only use it at the last moment of life and death. Let's see if he can still withstand it. Baiyu once again strengthened the energy and punched the ground with his fist. His train of thought was undoubtedly correct. Although Ding Ming's body was strong, the ground could not withstand such a bombardment. Let's see if he can still stand when the ground is broken. Boom! There was an explosion, and another 5-meter-wide crater was smashed into the ground. Grass and stones flew everywhere, and smoke filled the air. Unfortunately, this punch had no effect at all. In the smoke and dust, Ding Ming jumped out in a very strange way. It was like a dragon swimming out of the clouds. After a somersault in the air, the tip of his sword lightly touched the surface of the light shield. This was not an attack, but using the power of this point to bounce Ding Ming up into the sky. A miracle happened at this moment. The human-shaped light rose to the sky behind the armor and suddenly stopped. Then Ding Ming made a difficult move. His body twisted into an arc. This was a very classic looking back at the moon move. The long sword in his hand stabbed down from the top of his head. At this moment, countless filament-like white light swept down like a torrential rain. The light shield flashed rapidly, just like the defense of the armor. However, this time, the attack was so dense that the strong light on the light shield was so dense that it formed a light shield. The rain-like sword light swept through everything like a storm, constantly hitting the waveform energy defense array. Baiyu was also struggling to retreat step by step. Even with the excellent defense of the Hercules armor, he was still repelled. One could imagine the power of Ding Ming's martial skill. It was the Zhao's lone sword that Zhao Yu taught him in the Leaston Academy. After a long time of research and practice, Ding Ming finally used it. Chapter 252. The lone sword of Zhao had always been a thorn in Ding Ming's side. Why did he say so? Back then, when Zhao Yu taught Ji how the moves of the mysterious man, there were only a few lines of explanations left in Ji Hao's memory. Without Zhao Yu's personal guidance, it would be extremely difficult for others to understand the real skills, secrets, essence, and charm of the mysterious man. It cannot be helped. The culture of Huaxia emphasized that it could only be understood but not explained. Sometimes, for those with mediocre talent, no matter how much you taught them, they would not be able to understand the profound martial arts. However, for those with extraordinary talent, they would be able to understand by analogy, even without being taught. In fact, along the way, most of the time, Ding Ming would feel dizzy looking at this martial arts technique. The lone sword of Zhao was really too difficult to understand. When he was on planet V4, he suddenly had an idea. Since he did not understand it, he might as well practice it according to his understanding. He pointed his long sword, leaped into the air, and turned around to stab out a light curtain of sword rain. This was the essence of a line of explanation in the lone sword of Zhao. The body flies, the sword soars into the sky, the body turns into a flying eagle, the blade turns into the ground, the sword reflects the void, the body and the enemy vanishes. This was based on the full force release of the 7 origins of the Diamond Star technique. The light and shadow produced by the sword was controlled by the telekinesis vision. As for why the Hercules armor was repelled, it was because the Overlord's mountain-crushing force was attached to it. The scene of tens of thousands of swords shooting out at the same time was colorful and magnificent. This was the ultimate beauty of a martial artist's path of cultivation. The rain of sword was still going on, but the inside of the armor was constantly sounding alarms. Warning, warning, the matrix capacity is 76. 33%, 70. 9%, 61. 28%, 56. 45%. Bailu was so angry that he smashed the control panel. Damn it. Why can't I continue to charge it? The system's voice said, the current capacity has reached the limit. Forcible charging will damage the body. It is recommended that the body be hit directly. Bailu was so angry that his scalp went numb. He did not expect Ding Ming's nonsense to be right. This Hercules armor was indeed flawed. Its design should not have had such a low load capacity. If it could only withstand the attack of an advanced warlord, wouldn't it be a suicide mission for those combat masters and warlords? Ding Ming was not talking nonsense. The research and development department of Shenghao Group did not treat Baiyu as a human being. They made an immature, defective product for him to equip. They wanted to see what problems there were that needed to be improved. They did not want him to follow Hu Chengji to Cypress Grove Planet to show off. But it was meaningless to think about this now. Under the fierce rain of swords, the light shield finally let out a long whooshing sound. It sounded like a tire leaking air. The energy had finally been exhausted, and the matrix slowly disappeared. At this moment, Ding Ming's body suddenly straightened. The human-shaped light pupil flew into the rain with a sword in hand. He seemed to have completely merged with the rain. In the rainstorm, a miraculous scene appeared again. A huge golden-yellow divine eagle image faintly appeared. With a whoosh, it crashed down with a whistling sound. It was like an eagle soaring in the sky. Even though it knew that there was thunder and lightning in front of it, it still charged forward bravely without hesitation. With a whoosh, the mirror image of the divine eagle seemed to pass through the armor. Countless steel plates fell off. The armor was originally a majestic-looking strange bird, but now it looked like a plucked chicken. The metal fibers on the surface of the armor were all damaged. However, its body was still intact. This showed that the defense of the Hercules armor was really tough. The rain of swords finally disappeared, and the divine eagle was destroyed. The open space returned to darkness. In the darkness, Baiyu's crazy laughter rang out. Ha 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 ha. Idiot Ding Ming. Do you think you're so great just because you have a high-level martial art? The Hercules armor is the most advanced defense product in the entire Holy Grail Federation and the Norse Empire. You want to challenge it with a broken sword? Ha 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 ha. Show me what you have. Ding Ming was standing on the side of the armor. He maintained a backhand backstab posture, and the long sword pierced through the waist of the armor. Ding Ming had always been meticulous. Previously, he had succeeded twice in the same position on the Nemesis armor. The wound on the steel plate was very obvious. Besides, there was nothing that the Korea metal sword could not pierce through. However, with the size of the Hercules armor, the tip of the sword would not be able to pierce through Baiyu, who was in the core cabin. That was why Baiyu laughed so arrogantly. Ding Ming also laughed. His smile was very disdainful. Yes, this is the best defensive armor. I admit it. But to defeat you, I don't need to break the armor. Last time, you robbed me of a whole bag of things and left me on the carrier. This time, I will leave you in this armor. He paused, and his tone became cold again. Captain Bai, we are even. Baiyu suddenly coughed violently inside the armor. The sound of his coughing was abnormal, like that of a tuberculosis patient. His voice became panicked and frightened. Dude, what did you do to me? You bastard, you poisoned me. Cough, cough, cough. Like what Ding Ming had said, this battle armor was really hard to be destroyed. His last strike was not meant to kill Baiyu. His real purpose was to send the long sword into the core module of the battle armor and inject the toxic energy that he had refined during his cultivation on Planet V4 into the core module. As long as a tiny bit of the toxin entered the internal air circulation system of the battle armor, it would be the end of the donut, pearl milk tea, and instant noodles. He did not believe that Baiyu's origin energy was stronger than his. If he could not kill Baiyu, he would poison Baiyu. If he could not fight Baiyu head-on, he would play dirty. Ding Ming felt more and more that Meng Yan's poison skills were good. She could always sneak into the enemy's weakness without anyone noticing. Cough. Cough, cough, cough. Baiyu is obviously deeply poisoned. Ding Ming's origin energy was much higher than his, so naturally, Baiyu's origin energy could not resist the refined poison. Inside the armor, Baiyu's skin was withering, turning green, and rotting at a speed visible to the naked eye. He gritted his teeth and used the last of his strength to press on the control panel a few times. Only then did he laugh viciously. Hee, you think this is the end? Dream on. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me. At this moment, a black shadow flashed in the distance. The Black Shadow was obviously a light speed origin ability user. He used transient steps continuously and arrived beside Ding Meng in a few leaps. Without saying anything, he grabbed Ding Meng's arm and used transient steps. Then, he used divine steps. The two of them floated into the lake outside the beach like ghosts. The voice of the armor system said, "Equipment removal command received. Execution approved. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A blue-white light spot suddenly appeared in the energy chamber of the Hercules armor. The light spot was expanding at an exponential rate. Looking from the highest point of the small island in the middle of the lake, with the Hercules armor as the center, a rotating blue-white hemispherical force field was generated in the central open space. In the blink of an eye, it expanded to the edge of the entire island. This was the self-destruction program of the armor. It was not an explosion, but a collapse of everything around it using the energy of the silver core stone. With a whoosh, the force field suddenly shrank until it disappeared. The small island in the middle of the lake turned into a huge pit. The pit was full of fiery red magma, and the lake water immediately surged in. Large clouds of white mist rose in this space, and the whole starship trembled slightly. The nest of the extreme bandits was reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. There was nothing left. All the people, objects, buildings, corpses, vehicles, facilities, everything was gone. They were all melted into slag, and there was not even a slag left. After about 5 minutes, 2 people finally emerged from the lake. Ding Meng was helping Du Mo stumble to the shore. Both of them were covered in wounds and gasping for breath. Du Mo had been cooperating with Ding Meng from the beginning. He was also the one who set up the underground control room. First, he killed the mercenaries below. Then he shut down the energy supply system of the entire island and cut off the connection with the outside world. It was also Du Mo who equipped the Nemesis. At the critical moment, it was Du Mo who helped Ding Meng kill Guan Bai, interfere with the man in the suit, and sneak attack on Bai Yu. At the last moment, it was also Du Mo who teleported Ding Meng into the water with martial arts. Of course, Ding Meng would not leave him alone. Now the two of them were barely standing. Du Mo's arm was seriously injured, and Ding Meng was also exhausted after running the armor to the extreme. This guy is really ruthless. He even thought of blowing himself up. In Ding Meng's mind, Bai Yu should not be the kind of fierce person who is not afraid of death. Du Mo gasped and said, "I thought of this a long time ago. Once he is no match for you, he is likely to die together with you. If I get this specimen armor, Shenghao Group will probably make him suffer." Ding Meng looked at him gratefully. If Du Mo had not risked his life to save him, he would have been melted into this terrible rock pit. Du Mo seemed to know what he was thinking. He said with a wry smile, "You don't have to thank me. I should thank you." Ding Meng said, "Oh." Du Mo said, "I was still too naive. I thought I could do whatever I wanted with just one armor. I was really wrong. The teacher was right. There will always be someone stronger." His Nemesis armor was indeed incomparable to the Hercules armor in terms of comprehensive performance, but Nemesis also had its advantages: swiftness, speed, and sharpness. It was an assassin-like armor. Even if he fought with products like Hercules and Tyrol, he should not have been so embarrassed. In the end, it was because he was not proficient enough that he was beaten to death by Bai Yu. If it were his teacher, it would be a completely different scene. However, the armor of Shenghao Group was still a defective product. The real mature products had not yet appeared. He dared not imagine how powerful the complete version of the Hercules armor would be once it appeared. In short, during this trip to Cypress Grove, Du Mo realized his immaturity and shortcomings. Ding Meng looked at his young face and said sincerely, "But I still want to thank you." Du Mo asked why. Ding Meng said meaningfully, "I am not thanking you. I am thanking you on behalf of the people on planet KV-303. Finally, they have avenged their loved ones." Du Mo was silent for a long time. Finally, a gentle and friendly smile appeared on his face. "This is my original intention of coming here. Perhaps this is also your original intention." Chapter 253. Suddenly, a light spot appeared in the dark sky. The light spot gradually grew bigger and slowly landed on the shore of the lake. It was indeed a light plunderer flying car. The door opened quickly, and the incubus waved from inside. "Mr. Ting, come on up." Ding Ming didn't hesitate. He lowered his head and got into the car with Duo. The flying car took off again and flew toward the starship's maintenance port. The person driving the flying car was the Russian. The Russian's piloting skills had always been good. No one knew where he got this flying car from. Maybe he even stole it. The person in the passenger seat was naturally the four-eyed man. The four-eyed man was smoking happily at this moment, and his eyes were narrowed into a line. The Russian was a little dissatisfied. "Four-eyed, look at how hard I'm working, getting the car and picking people up. Give me one of your cigarettes." "Yes, the brand of that dead mother." "Dead mother?" The four-eyed man suddenly coughed violently. "You uncultured thing. That's called a shima. You think Hongta Mountain is Hong Hong Mountain. A shima, you call it a dead mother. Next time, if you get a double nine, will you say it's to save a bug?" The Russian smiled and said, "Yes, yes, yes, a shima. A shima. Give me a shima." The two smoked left and right, and the flying car soon arrived at the maintenance port. The main leader of the extreme pirate corps was killed, and the space of the island in the middle of the lake probably hadn't disturbed other starships, so now was the best time to evacuate. However, even though Ding Ming had thought of various escape strategies, he had never thought that the giant ring transport ship Tianyun would be docked at the maintenance port. Liao Zhang and a group of beautiful women lined up on the tarmac. When they saw Ding Ming and the others get off, they immediately bowed their heads in unison. "Welcome, distinguished guests, to the Tianyun transport ship. Cypress Planet welcomes your arrival. We wish you a pleasant night." This. Ding Ming was now a little impressed by the four-eyed man and the Russian. They actually summoned Liao Zhang's public safety ship and took this ship back without anyone noticing. Along the way, even if the extreme pirate regiment felt that something was wrong and wanted to chase after them, they couldn't do anything. This was a tacit agreement that they couldn't attack a ship. After all, it was a rule set by Lu Ming himself. Now that Lu Ming was dead, they didn't know where the new commander was. Ding Ming couldn't help but be curious. "Doesn't Liao Zhang only go out once every 3 months? Why are you waiting here?" Meng Yin was also curious. "How did you two convince him?" Cough, cough. Farais rolled his eyes and replied in a low voice, "The Russian and I got 20 guru membership cards from him." Cough, cough. "Genius." Little rascal popped out. "You can do that." Liao Zhang took the initiative to explain. He, Brother Wolf? Oh no, it's Boss Ding. Boss Ding, when you came, I promised you that your mood is our expression, and your thoughts are our actions. Customers come first, and our service is unlimited. Do you want a room? 40% off. You're a regular customer, huh? Ding Ming couldn't help but smile. 2 rooms, then. As the Heaven's Fortune swayed out of the starship and slowly drifted to the main channel of Cypress Grove, Liao Zhang led the group of people inside the cabin. However, the direction they went was not the VIP accommodation area, but the dining area. This time, the four-eyed man was puzzled. "Hey, Boss Liao, we're not hungry now. What are you doing? Are you treating us to a meal?" Liao Zhang had a difficult look on his face. "Director, sure, this is just a small business. It's not easy. It's true that you applied for 20 great God membership cards, but that person over there, he directly applied for 50 super God membership cards. Guru membership cards? What the F asterisk CK? There was such a thing?" The four-eyed man was a little dumbfounded. He suspected that his ears were foggy and he didn't hear clearly. However, Ding Ming suddenly smiled. "I was wondering why the Heaven's Fortune came here. So that's why." The dining area of the Heaven's Fortune was naturally very simple. It was not even as good as the underground restaurant on the island in the middle of the lake. However, there was still a long table for 4 people. Now, there was a person sitting at the table in the center. There was a bottle of wine and a few side dishes on the table. It was obvious that this person was in a good mood and was still in the mood to drink. It was not until Ding Ming and his group approached that Hu Changji smiled and looked up. "Sit." There were 4 bodyguards behind who Chengji, and the young man was also there. Seeing this, Mengyan couldn't help but roll her eyes at the 4-eyed man and Mao. Her meaning was obvious. You think you're very smart, don't you? They're not fools. They've already anticipated everything you can think of, and they've been sitting here from the beginning, waiting to intercept you. The 4-eyed man was dissatisfied with Liao Zhang. Boss Liao, you're not being kind. You didn't tell me you had a guru membership card in advance. Don't you know it now? Liao Zhang muttered in a low voice. Hu Chengji's people wanted him to get a guru membership card. Even if he didn't have such a card, he had to get one. Although the name Ding Feng Food Entertainment International Company, Ltd, was very cool, Boss Liao couldn't pee in front of the Shenghao group. Ding Ming quickly sat down opposite Hu Qingji. I'm afraid the person you're waiting for is not me, right? Hu Qingji smiled. Brother Ding, you misunderstood. I'm not waiting for a person. If he wasn't waiting for a person, then he was waiting for the goods. As for who came, it didn't matter. Ding Ming had already thought of this. Either Bai Yu came back with the inverse source crystal, or he came with his backpack. Anyway, Hu Chengji was always here, so it didn't matter who came. Hu Qingji put away his smile and said seriously, but little brother Ding is still beyond my expectation. You can actually come to this ship. It's really amazing. Although his words were polite and euphemistic, others could still understand what he meant. Originally, the person who came to the ship alive should be Bai Yu, not Ding Ming. But now Ding Ming came, which proved that Bai Yu had been killed. This was a big grudge because he was facing the giant of the Shenghao group. Ding Ming pondered and said, It seems that Mr. Hu wants to give me an explanation, right? Hu Qingji smiled again. Brother Ding, you misunderstood again. Do you think that our Shenghao group will deal with you? He finally admitted that he was the representative sent by the Shenghao group, but his words still revealed Ding Ming's suspicion. Ding Ming sighed. To be honest, I also hope that this is an illusion. Hu Chengji smiled and said, Our Shenghao group has always cherished and valued talents. We value talent as much as the development of new technologies. Young talents like you, Brother Ding, we can't wait to respect you. How can we think of dealing with you? He smiled very kindly, but Ding Ming saw the cunning side of this guy from his smiling face. The reason was very simple. The other party had been eyeing this inverse source crystal from the beginning. Hu Qingji continued. In fact, our Shenghao group has always welcomed those with lofty ideals to join us. After all, this is one of the biggest platforms in the Federation. People like Brother Ding can only really show your talent on this kind of platform. He was not flattering, but admiring from the bottom of his heart. Ding Ming's amazing appraisal skills were already superb, and now he had boarded the Heaven's Fate alive. Ding Ming was still alive, which proved that Bai Yu and the armor were probably destroyed. Such a powerful person was indeed worthy of the attention of the Shenghao group. Of course, what he really valued was Ding Ming's age, which was Ding Ming's greatest asset. In the face of Hu Chengji's lobbying, Ding Ming just smiled faintly. Officer Bai Yu seems to be on this platform, but unfortunately, I didn't see him show any talent, and I didn't even see his body. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere in the restaurant suddenly became tense. Hu Qingji was still smiling. People's encounters are different. I always think that a real talent is not the one who goes to the platform, but the platform comes to him. Clap, clap, clap. A few soft claps suddenly sounded, and a soft female voice came from the entrance of the passage. Mr. Hu, I really have to admire you. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. Everyone turned their heads and saw Su Mengqing leading Ilan and the male bodyguard over. The 4-eyed man in the crowd quickly turned to Liao Zhang. Bossy, don't tell me that you let her on the ship because she got 100 Super God membership cards? Liao Zhang's expression couldn't be more bitter. She didn't get a membership card. The 4-eyed man was puzzled. Then how did she get on the ship? Liao Zhang rolled his eyes. That's because she bought the ship. The 4-eyed man slapped his forehead. F*CK, you can really do whatever you want with money. Harry, I think I'm so unlucky. The Harry couldn't give him a cigarette now, because Su Mengqing had already sat down at the table and said with a smile, Mr. Hu, do you know what I admire the most about you? Hu Qingji smiled and said, Miss Su, please tell me. Su Mengqing rolled her eyes and said, I admire your shrewdness in doing business. You obviously came for this batch of goods, but you used the slogan of cherishing talents and wanted to recruit Brother Ding to join Shenghao. In this way, you not only got the goods, but also didn't spend a penny. You're so smart. Hu Qingji was really calm. At this time, he was still smiling. But at least I come with full sincerity. If Brother Ding has any needs, you could just tell me. As long as Shenghao Group can provide it, we will definitely do our best to provide it. These words sounded illusory, but in fact, it was the case. Because now everyone should know that Ding Meng's backpack contained the inverse source crystal. Even if you offer enough money, people might not be willing to sell it. You had to exchange something of the same value for it to be possible. Su Mengqing also smiled and said, I'll be responsible to say that what Shenghao Group has, Xinhong Group also has. Brother Ding, just tell me what you want. She finally admitted her identity, and when she said this, her charming eyes glanced at Ding Meng intentionally or unintentionally. The hint was very strong. Of course, any man would understand her eyes. She didn't believe that Ding Meng would be indifferent. Things had developed to this point, and it was impossible to fight. Su Mengqing was sitting there, and it was impossible to fight. However, these two families were staring at him covetously. Ding Meng also had a headache. Although he had never been afraid of anyone, the truth was there. No matter how willful you were, you couldn't be the enemy of the whole world. He had already offended Haitian Group. He couldn't offend these two giants at the same time. Shenghao Group or Xinhong Group. He had to choose one now, or it would be a problem to leave Cypress Star. At this time, Du Mo, who had been very quiet, suddenly said, Ding Meng, in fact, our Starlight Academy has a deep research in this field. Xinhong Group benefited from the technical support of our school. Ding Meng turned his head in surprise. At this moment, he suddenly realized that Du Mo was on Su Mengqing's side. Chapter 254. Ding Meng had this understanding because Meng Yin had explained it to him before. Su Mengqing came to Cypress Planet not because of the Starbao Group's commission, but because of the recommendation of a visiting professor at the Federation Starlight University. Du Mo was a student of Starlight University, and at this moment, he was helping out on such an important occasion. Obviously, he was speaking for the Starbao Group. For a moment, Ding Meng was lost in thought. He was not determined to get the inverse source crystal. From the beginning of his curiosity to the present exhaustion after the battle, he felt that this hot potato was getting more and more troublesome. The inverse source crystal was different from the K-virus. After all, not many people knew about the K-virus, and it could not be separated after fusing with him. Although the inverse source crystal was priceless, Ding Meng still knew that if he kept this thing on him, sooner or later, it would blow him to pieces like a bomb. He agreed with Xiao AI's point of view. Only Shenghao and Xinhong had the ability to keep this kind of thing. If he kept it in his hands, he might not be able to keep it. This Du Mo had no malice towards him. Taking advantage of the fact that they need his help now, he should get some useful resources for the transformation. Thinking of this, Ding Meng decisively took off his backpack and slowly took out the crystal-carrying matrix inside. After this small metal suitcase was placed on the table, Ding Meng said meaningfully, You two, I only have one thing to say. For this thing, more than 200 people for battle armors and 6 war supremacy's lives have been put on the line. It's up to you. Hu Qingji and Su Mengqing were shrewd people. They definitely understood what he was trying to say. I paid so much to get it. If you want to take it away, it's impossible for you to do so with just your flowery words. When he said this, Hu Qingji and Su Mengqing did not immediately answer. Both of them showed a thoughtful expression because they were secretly guessing what Ding Meng wanted. At this critical moment, Du Mo slowly opened his mouth again. Actually, Xinhong Corporation also has its own Kiki server. Our Xinghua University is also dedicated to research in this area. Miss Lin Kaja graduated from Xinghua University. This Du Mo was also quite smart. He didn't directly say that the inverse source crystal would be helpful to the cultivation of origin ability users, but he hinted that if you were willing to give it to Xing Hong wouldn't treat you unfairly. At least, Su Mingqing's status was much higher than Hu Qingji's. No matter what, she was still a big star. If she made a promise in front of so many people, could it be that she would go back on her words? Even if she wanted to go back on her word, it was impossible for the Starlight Corporation to do so. With such a large corporation, such a famous brand, and the backing of Starlight University, it was a done deal. Su Mingqing suddenly smiled. Actually, there's no point in discussing this now. The most important thing right now is to transport this thing back to the Holy Grail Federation safely. It can't wander around in space anymore. Even Hu Qingji couldn't refute this point. This was indeed a top priority. As long as the thing was transported back to the Federation, it would be impossible for any accidents to happen to it. Seeing that Hu Qingji didn't say anything, Su Mingqing smiled even sweeter. Elder Hu, I want to ask you a question. If I were Brother Ding, and I asked Shenghao Corporation to give priority to my needs when researching this thing, would Shenghao be able to do it? Hu Qingji could no longer remain calm. Definitely. I dare to guarantee it. Su Mingqing continued to ask. Then, if my requirement is that I must be the first to use this thing, would you guarantee it? This? Hu Qingji was a little surprised. He asked in return, Miss Su, do you dare to make such a guarantee? Su Mingqing didn't answer him. She just waved to the side, and Ilan immediately brought her a square metal box. The box was printed with the logo of the Starlight Corporation. Su Mingqing installed it on the genetic lock of the suitcase with a click. Then, she took out a small, thin, translucent chip from the box. Ding Meng had seen this thing in the Flying Star City before. It was a very powerful liquid lock. It looked like a box, but it was actually made of top-grade liquid metal. The chip was the only key, and it could only be unlocked by the password inside. The password was a 256-digit dynamic password that changed every 5 seconds. Moreover, the chip also needed the unique password of the owner of the box to activate the password. To put it bluntly, as long as the protective crystal film on the surface of the chip was not unlocked, no one could open this suitcase. Without saying anything, Su Mingqing handed the chip to Ding Meng and said seriously, Mr. Ting, is Xing Hong sincere enough? If you don't come to Xing Hong Corporation in person, no one can open this suitcase. As for the technology to open it, Xing Hong Corporation definitely has the means, but I believe that such a situation won't happen. No one in Xing Hong Corporation dares to do so. Her action undoubtedly showed Xing Hong's attitude. Ding Meng could even use the inverse source crystal. Anyway, it couldn't fall into Shenghao's hands. This was the real purpose of Su Mingqing's trip. Ding Meng slowly took the chip and carefully put it in the secret compartment of his backpack. Faced with this result, Hu Qingji could only shake his head helplessly. Miss Su, you're really generous. Su Mingqing smiled and said, I'm just borrowing someone else's hands. Why do you mind? Hu Qingji was lying. He slowly got up and looked at Ding Meng meaningfully. Brother Ding, you're still young and promising. You can even reject Sheng Hao's invitation. Young people are really driven. Then, we'll meet again in the future if fate wills it. After saying this, Hu Qingji left with his people without looking back. Ding Meng was still unmoved. Du Mo patted him on the shoulder in a friendly manner. Ding Meng, don't worry about his threats. When you come to the Federation, Shenghao Corporation won't be able to do anything to you. Trust me. After saying this, he took out a crystal chip that looked like a memory chip and handed it to Ding Meng. This is the special pass of the Holy Grail Federation's Azure system. With it, you can freely enter and leave all the international space stations in the Azure system. This is a small gift from me. Consider it my thanks for your help on this trip. I hope you won't refuse. This gift was not small, and it was almost impossible for anyone to refuse. The special passes of the Holy Grail Federation were not registered with real names. Each pass had to be personally signed by the highest governor of the relevant galaxy. They were usually used to invite non-citizens of the Norse Empire or outer space to enter the Federation. These people were either specially invited by the Federation, had made great contributions, or were special people. Duomo had to admit that he was quite powerful to be able to get this pass. In the black gold market on the darknet, the special passes of the Holy Grail Federation, no matter which galaxy, did not have a price tag on it. They were all labeled with the words "deal in detail" at the end. This meant that this thing could not be bought with money. They did not accept money transactions. The pass was like a mini-screen. One could see the country's logo, the governor's personal signature, the galaxy's anti-counterfeiting virtual seal, and the universal crystal seal. The holder of this pass is a specially invited member of the Holy Grail Federation's Azure system. All levels of organizations are required to approve this pass. Little Rascal couldn't help but jump out. This is great. With this, Ding Ming can enter the Federation. After so many things, you can finally do it. Xiao AI said, yes. Send the bracelet in your pocket back to Little Four's hometown. ACT 5570 promised to give it to him. Little Rascal's eyelids drooped. Little Four's hometown is not in the Azure system. It's in the Linda system. Ding Ming still can't go there. Xiao AI asked curiously. Then WH can ACT 5570 do in the Azure system? Little Rascal snorted. Misty is in the Azure system. What do you think Ding Ming should do? Of course it's business. Where's Spring? Where's Spring? Spring is in the beautiful Azure system. Xiao AI thought for a moment. Not bad. After Ding Ming put away the pass, Su Mingqing handed over a glowing crystal card. She blinked and said, Mr. Ting, this is a special guest card from the Starbow Corporation. The Azure system naturally has a branch of the Starbow Corporation. When you arrive at the Starbow Corporation, you can use this card to freely enter the Starbow Corporation and enjoy the VIP treatment. The value of this guest card couldn't be compared to the pass, but Su Mingqing was an idiot. When she saw that Duomo cared so much about Ding Ming and even gave him the pass, she naturally knew that this young man had to be favored by Duomo. Giving out the guest card was not only a good way to establish good karma, but also a good way to rope in someone with potential for the Starbow Corporation. Of course, Ding Ming definitely couldn't reject such a gift. He had to go to the Starbow group sooner or later. He had spent so much effort to snatch the inverse source crystal. How could he let them take advantage of him for nothing? He definitely had to get something back. Seeing that the situation was resolved, Liao Zhang finally became active. He came over with a smile on his face. Miss Su, Mr. Du, Mr. Ding, the room is ready. You can rest assured. Is there anything else I can do? If you need anything, just let me know. Liao Zhang will do his best to help. Of course, he had to try his best to curry favor with these people in front of him. Ding Ming and Du Mo aside, Su Mingqing's status was there for all to see. Who knows, with just a word from her, he would become rich. Du Mo smiled. There is nothing else. Will the boat be able to reach the music department smoothly? No problem, no problem. Liao Zhang patted his chest. I guarantee that there will be no problem at all. Du Mo turned his head. Ding Ming, if you have nothing else to do, would you like to go to the Azure system with us? Ding Ming said, I won't go. Oh, Du Mo was a little surprised. Why? This crystal-carrying matrix is going to be sent to the Blue Moon. Won't you go with us? Ding Ming waved his hand. I will go later. I have to go back to the Green Arrow Corps now. Du Mo immediately understood that Ding Ming must go back to KV-303 first. The people there must be waiting for his news. Thinking of this, Du Mo couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Well, Ding Ming, if you want to come to the Blue Moon in the future, please be sure to contact me. Let me do my best as a friend. Anyway, we fought side by side on Cypress Tree. Ding Ming smiled. You are too polite. Chapter 255, Planet KV-303. Darkness shrouded the icy planet as usual, but there were already many spots of light on the ground. After the hard work of the Green Arrow Corps in the past few months, the new spaceport had been completed. A U-shaped terminal building stood on the snowy ground. It was much larger than the previous base and could at least accommodate medium-sized carrier starships. Not far to the west of the spaceport, 6 modern, 7-story square buildings had also been built. The original refugees no longer had to live in the basement. At least everyone had spacious and bright rooms. Small spaceships constantly took off and landed on the tarmac, and people strolled in 2s and 3s nearby. The lighting facilities in the terminal building were not dazzling, but the soft orange light dispelled the turbidity and darkness in the area. The people who migrated from Planet V4 had now adapted a life here. Although they could not become bounty hunters, there were no illnesses to speak of in this place. Many refugees began to seriously learn medical knowledge from Shuiyin and the others, so the first floor of the building on the right side of the U-shaped terminal building was transformed into a functional hall. The first thing everyone did after waking up every day was to run here to see if they could find something to do, to study and learn new knowledge from the people of Planet V4, or to help the hunters carry supplies. Everyone was working hard to contribute their strength, hoping that one day they could move to a planet with a better environment. Qiao was also moving boxes in the corner of the hall on the first floor. These were the supplies from the other bases of the Green Arrow Corps. After this period of treatment and getting along with everyone, a smile gradually appeared on her face. Obviously, she had walked out of the shadow of grief. People lived not only for themselves, but also for those who had passed away. They had to live better so that they could be worthy of their departure. Suddenly, a figure braved the wind and snow and passed through the runway. He swept in a hall like a whirlwind and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Everyone, don't be busy. Brother Dingmeng is back. Brother Dingmeng is back." Yu Yang's shout directly made the hall boil, and everyone suddenly became excited. Dingmeng had been away for several months. Last month, Captain Gulaga returned with good news. Hundreds of people died in the extreme pirate corps of Cyprus Ancient Star overnight. The General Commander Lu Ming, the Subcommanders Guan Bai, Mao Zhan, Mao Wan, and Hu Biao were all killed by Dingmeng. Cyprus Ancient Star changed in the blink of an eye. Howlin, the former commander of the 5th Regiment, became the general commander of the Extreme Pirate Corps. The first thing the new commander did was to contact Fong Jinghao of the Green Arrow and express his willingness to provide 5 transport ships as a sign of friendship. In the future, the two families would not disturb each other. When the news came back, everyone felt refreshed and happy. They had been bullied and hunted by the pirates for many years. From now on, such days were finally over. Even the extreme pirate troop had surrendered to the Green Arrow troop. Naturally, the other pirates in outer space did not dare to come. Now, when she heard that Dingmeng had returned, Qiao, like the others, dropped what she was doing and ran outside. The tarmac was soon surrounded by people. About 20 minutes later, a broken blazing shark spaceship finally appeared in the night sky. It slowly landed with blue crystal flames. After the connecting cabin door opened, Dingmeng and the others walked down slowly. No one knew who took the lead, but everyone began to clap. Yu Liang had already rushed up and said, "Brother Ding, you're finally back. We've been waiting for you for a long time." Seeing the excited, smiling faces of the people around him, Dingmeng smiled from the bottom of his heart. "Sorry for making you worry." Qiao also ran up and said, "Dingmeng, you are wearing so little. Your clothes are too shabby. Let me mend them for you." "Okay." Dingmeng noticed that Qiao's face was very rosy. She must have completely recovered during this time. "Qiao, are you completely recovered?" Qiao nodded seriously. "Dr. Shui cured me." Dingmeng asked, "Where is Aunt Xian?" Yu Yang quickly said, "She is in the commander's office. I will take you there." Galaga's new office was on the top floor of the center of the U-shaped terminal. Although the office was new, the furnishings inside were the same as before. Except for the necessary tables and chairs, there was basically nothing else. It could not be more simple because Gulaga was reluctant to spend extra money. As long as he had extra money, he would use it to buy daily necessities for the refugees. As soon as Dingmeng and the others came in, Gulaga, Salmon, Xun, and Rin Tianlan all came up to greet them. Among them, the most excited was Silman. He knew that Ding Meng had killed Hu Biao and the others, but he did not know the details. Of course, Ding Meng could not give him a detailed description. Ding Meng just shook his hand firmly. "Captain, I finally came back alive." Although his tone was calm, the surging emotions in his heart were indescribable. Ding Meng could come back alive, so the ones who died must be the enemy. Salman could also imagine that Ding Meng's trip to Cyprus' ancient planet was not as easy as Gulaga said. He must have gone through layers of difficulties and life and death crises. Originally, he had a lot of things to say, but when he saw that Ding Meng's clothes were all damaged, all the words were stuck in his throat, and he could not even spit out a word. Ding Meng was definitely going all out to avenge everyone's dead relatives. Salman could only shake Ding Meng's hand firmly, and all the gratitude and emotions were in this handshake. When he saw Salman's teary eyes, Gulaga could not help but laugh. "Captain, you've been a man for so many years. How did you become a woman now? Brother Ding should be happy to come back." Salman rubbed his eyes and tried to squeeze out a smile. I'm too excited. I don't want to say anything. I've specially left a few bottles of good wine for Brother Ding to come back. I'll go get them now." He left as soon as he said he would, but Ding Meng was curious. "You still have wine? Where did you get it?" Gulaga smiled and said, "Brother Ding, while you were away, your classmates from the Nuashing Empire visited this place." "Oh." Ding Meng was even more curious. "Who?" Gulaga pulled him to sit down. "That's Miss Xingyi. She was entrusted by Miss Chu Shaoqing to come here to look for you. Unfortunately, you've already gone to Bogger Planet. To not distract you, we didn't contact you." Ding Meng asked, "What did Xingyi come here for?" Gulaga said, "Miss Xingyi asked me to tell you that your arrest warrant in the Norse Empire's military has been revoked. This was facilitated by Miss Chu and Sergeant Xinjia. Colonel Fong of the military hopes that you can return to the Norse Empire and promises to give you the honor of a third-class soldier." Ding Meng nodded. He had already thought of this. As long as Chu Shaoqing and Xinjia could return to the Norse Empire, his innocence would soon be proven. After all, everyone had seen Ji Ming's defection with their own eyes. Gulaga continued, "Miss Chu can't come here in person because she has officially joined the Norse Empire's military. She has already rushed to the Fertile Chalk system half a year ago. Miss Chu hopes that you can also rush to the front line of the Frogman Kingdom to meet her." Ding Meng couldn't help but smile. It was impossible for him to go to the front line of the Norse Empire now. It would take a starship without a curvature engine to fly such a long distance. Of course, he had more things to take care of now. Gulaga said, "In addition, Miss Xingyi was entrusted by Miss Chu and Sergeant Xinjia to deliver a batch of support supplies to us. There are a total of 2 starships and 3,000 single-cabin nutritional products. Brother Ding, come and take a look at the list." "No need." Ding Meng smiled slightly. His heart was filled with warmth. His friends had never forgotten about him. They knew that this place was in a difficult situation, so they simply asked Xingyi to bring supplies. After all, they were worried about him. The only regret was that he came back a little late and missed the time to meet with Xingyi. After all, he was on planet TT-12 in the Norse Empire, and he still had many things to worry about. He wondered if old Yu and his daughter were doing well. "Where's Commander Fong?" Ding Meng suddenly asked. This time, it was Rin Tianlan who answered him. "Haha, Brother Ding, you didn't guess wrong. The tragedy on planet KV-303 has a lot to do with Zhuang Weiming and Hu Li. After Commander Fong went to the Federation, these 2 cowards have been isolated and investigated by the Federation's inspection department. However, the results are not out yet." "Isolated and investigated?" Ding Meng frowned. Tens of thousands of lives are dealt with like this. Hearing that his tone was not right, Meng Yin quickly explained, "The Federation has always emphasized legal evidence. They definitely have to give the public an explanation." Ding Meng immediately became expressionless. "If the Federation doesn't give everyone an explanation, then I'll give these 2 guys an explanation." There was a faint coldness in his words, but it was precisely because of this coldness that one could feel the faint killing intent. Now, everyone knew a little about Ding Ming. They knew that he was the kind of person who would do what he said, and no matter how difficult it was, he would dare to do it. Shuyan had to come out and persuade him softly. Ding Ming, after all, the Federation is not outer space. Using force is not a reasonable solution for many things. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions. Ding Ming nodded. I've already got the pass of the Holy Grail Federation, and I'm thinking of going to the Federation. Oh, Shuyan was finally interested. Can I go to the source of Holy Light? The source of Holy Light Galaxy was the central core of the Federation, and the capital, Holy Light City, was located in it. Ding Ming understood Shuyan's thoughts when she asked this question. Shuyan, Run Tunlan, and the descendants of this group of doctors had always been eager to return to the Federation to clear their names for the injustice they had experienced in the past. However, this was a big matter that could not be solved overnight. Moreover, Ding Ming had only gotten the pass of the Azure system. The Azure system was far away from the source of Holy Light, so he definitely could not go there. What Ding Ming really wanted to go to now was the Linda system. He did not forget the promise he had made to Little Four. No matter how difficult it is in the future, I will definitely bring it back to your hometown, over my dead body. Chapter 256. From a map of the Holy Grail Federation, the Azure system was located at the southernmost part of the Federation. Not far from the Azure system was the Linda system. But now, the Linda system can't be accessed. Gulaga suddenly poured cold water on him. What? Ding Ming was a little surprised. Galaga's expression was a little serious. There was a riot in the Linda system half a year ago. All of the refugee workers joined forces and started to oppose the Federation. Planet Thorn was located in the Linda system. It was the Federation's refugee camp for exiled workers. Ding Ming was sent to the Black Gold base from that place. It was not strange at all that the refugees and workers joined forces to cause trouble. Gulaga explained in a low voice, the Federation's refugee exile system has been controversial by many major media outlets. Last year, one of the mainstream media outlets of the Federation, Dragon Horse Media, had a reporter who disguised himself as a refugee sneak into the camp and secretly took a lot of videos. Dragon Horse Media quickly broadcast it on Star Wars TV. It caused a huge commotion in the Federation. Many human rights organizations and charities jumped out to protest. Ding Ming and the others did not say anything because the Federation and the Empire's borders were still a foreign world to them. They could only listen quietly. Gulaga continued. This reporter was on the way back to the Federation when the spaceship he was on crashed on an uninhabitable planet in the Linda system due to a malfunction. None of the 120 people on the spaceship survived. This incident caused a huge uproar. Dragon Horse Media urgently protested to the president. Many citizens in the capital took to the streets to protest. Everyone knew this. The reporter's spaceship did not malfunction. It was very likely that someone had tampered with it. Dragon Horse Media was a very influential media within the Federation. The person who dared to touch their reporter was probably not an ordinary person. There might even be one or more forces behind the scenes. In that case, the things involved were very complicated. After the incident, a civil organization that calls itself Sacred Alliance suddenly emerged on the major planets of the Linda system. It claims that it will unite all the refugee workers and overthrow the unfair system of the Federation. Half a year ago, large-scale riots broke out in the major cities of the Linda system. Most importantly of all, the riots hurt a lot of innocent civilians. The Federation has sent out troops to suppress the riots. 3 months ago, the Linda system imposed a curfew. Only warships are allowed to go out, and unauthorized ships are not allowed to enter. Even the ordinary civil aviation units are forbidden to enter. Although Galaga's words were short, everyone understood what he meant. Linda's current situation had probably escalated to the level of national security. Therefore, the military blockade was also a signal to the outside world, Those who have nothing to do with this, please leave as soon as possible, don't get involved, and stay as far away as possible. Don't worry, Brother Ding. Gulaga comforted him. Since you already have a pass to the Azure system, why don't you go there first and find a way to go to the Linda system? After all, the Linda system is within the Federation, and the military has not sealed off the devouring world. Ding Meng nodded. Galaga's words made sense. The Azure system was the only way to the Linda system from planet KV-303. It was better to go early than late. Of course, it was Little Rascal and Little AI who pushed him to join the Federation. At present, Ding Meng's strength had indeed improved a lot compared to when he was in the Black Gold base. However, in Little Rascal's eyes, he was still a beginner warrior. The reason was simple. You still haven't completed the cultivation of the basic technique, Diamond Star Technique. In other words, Diamond Star Technique was an 8-star technique. After hearing this news, Ding Meng wasn't happy. Instead, he was very worried. He had relied on the silver core stone energy from the Meteor City to break through the 7th origin point. As for the 8th origin point, he didn't even need to think about it. The difficulty factor would increase exponentially, and the energy required would also increase exponentially. In theory, he could cultivate with his own origin energy and the energy he collected through smelting, but the chances of him going berserk were very high. Little AI would definitely not agree to take the risk like last time. It was fine if he was lucky enough to succeed the first time, but if he wanted to do the same thing a second time, it was absolutely impossible. There weren't so many coincidences and luck in this world. Therefore, he needed to rely on more powerful silver core stones, inverse source crystals, excellent servers, and more advanced technology or equipment from the Federation. Moreover, Ding Meng should also be getting in touch with other techniques and techniques of other elements. The time was ripe, or else he wouldn't be able to improve his strength in all aspects. At the end of the day, the cultivation environment within the Federation was better than in outer space. After all, humans always had to strive for greater heights. Of course, entering the Federation wasn't something that could be done just like that. The long journey was one of the factors. Fong Jinghao still had to wait for the Green Arrow Corps' transport starships that had been authorized by the Federation to be transferred here. In addition, Ding Meng had just returned and needed time to recover. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to go back to his room to rest. Instead, he sat on the runway of the spaceport with Silman, Yu Liang, Four Eyes, and the Russian. Everyone sat in a circle and drank. The newly built spaceport was the result of everyone's hard work. Sitting here, one could truly feel the vitality and aura of the new base, filling them with joy and hope. Salman had actually left a box of good wine for Ding Meng. The box was made of paper, and inside there were 12 antique ceramic wine jugs. The Russian couldn't wait to open one of them. After taking a sip, his face immediately turned red, and he jumped around on the runway. Spicy. So spicy. This is an AF Asterisk King bar. It's chili water, right? Four Eyes quickly snorted. You idiot, this is our Huaxia's white wine. You haven't even tried white wine before, and you're still talking about chili water? Hot lady. The Russian took out a cigarette and lit it. F asterisk CK off. I'll smoke a Hong Hong Shan to relieve the spiciness. Four Eyes immediately stepped forward and kicked his butt. Idiot, how many times have I said it? It's not Hong Hong Shan, it's Hongtashan. Are you deaf? Didn't you hear me clearly? The Russian also returned a kick. Mother of asterisk Kerr, you're kicking my palace department? I'll kick you to death. Four Eyes laughed and stepped forward. You uncultured thing that called buttocks. You called it a Hong Hong Shan. Are you trying to make me laugh to death? Four Eyes, you idiot, I'll kick your Hong Hong Shan. I'll make you lose your image. After saying that, the Russian quickly wrestled with Four Eyes. Looking at the two guys chasing each other around on the runway, Salman couldn't help but laugh. To be honest, we haven't laughed in this base for a long time. Ever since the new base was built, everyone has been much happier. Ding Meng nodded. It'll get better in the future. Meng Yan also made an exception and poured herself a small glass of wine. Now that we can enter the Federation, everyone will get better. Of course, she didn't forget Ding Meng's instructions. If they wanted to completely cure the mutated poison in everyone's body, they had to go to the Federation to get the 7th-generation Angel military medical cabin. Now, there was finally hope. Salmon said, "By the way, Brother Ding, how long do you plan to stay in the Azure system this time?" He asked very carefully because he knew that planet KV-303 couldn't keep Ding Meng. After all, Ding Meng was different from him. With Ding Meng's age and strength, he would definitely be the target of all the big corporations and even the higher-ups in the military. Leaving was only a matter of time. However, he couldn't bear to let Ding Meng go. From Black Gold Base to planet KV-303, everyone had built a deep friendship along the way. Being separated from friends was never a good thing. Ding Meng was silent. He said, "As long as I have the chance, I'll definitely come back." When he said this, his fingers trembled slightly. The dark golden T-shaped knife quickly flipped to his fingertips. With a pop, he opened the wooden seal of a wine jug. After he raised his head and drank a big mouthful of wine, Salmon stared at his knife and said, "This knife of yours is very special." Ding Meng glanced at him. "That's what you said last time." Salmon smiled. "Last time was different. Last time, you used it to deal with the people from Extreme Heaven Company. This time, you used it to deal with the Extreme Pirate Troop. Also, I feel that you cherish this knife very much, right? You only use it to open wine after you win." Ding Meng said, "There's one thing you didn't guess correctly." Salmon asked curiously, "What is it?" Ding Meng sighed slightly. His expression became a little complicated. "Sometimes, this knife is not only used to celebrate, but also to remember." "Commemorate?" Salmon frowned. "Commemorate what?" Ding Meng said, "Captain, have you ever thought that this knife can be used to celebrate after defeating the enemy? But what if it can't defeat the enemy?" Salmon was silent for a long time before he spoke. "To be honest, I'm also worried that you won't be able to come back from your trip to Bogger Planet." Ding Meng looked at him. "What if I really can't come back?" Salmon also sighed. "Fortunately, this is outer space. Many things can be solved directly by force. However, once you go to the Federation, things will be different." Ding Meng could understand what he meant. After entering a highly developed human society, there were many things that couldn't be solved by force alone. The ways of the world between people, the intricate relationships between groups, the irreconcilable conflicts between the higher races and the lower races. Entering the Federation was like entering a large and complicated web of interpersonal relationships. Sometimes, humans lived like spiders. A spider's greatest ability was to weave a web. It spent its entire life weaving this web, because it could only survive by relying on this web. It waited for others to walk into the web, but it did not know that from the first day it started weaving this web, the first person to be caught in the web was itself. Seeing that he was deep in thought, Salmon said, "I understand now. This knife of yours isn't a souvenir, right?" Ding Meng did not answer him. Instead, he slowly got up and silently looked into the distance. It was unknown when the night sky started to snow again. A bright red bonfire was lit on the snowy ground. Ah Xiao, Xiao Wei, and the others were dancing happily around the bonfire. However, Ding Meng's eyes were lost in thought. His memory seemed to have brought him to another time and space. Chapter 257. It was also a snowy night, and there was also a bonfire. The bright light from the fire illuminated everyone's faces, and everyone's faces were filled with joyous smiles. Tianqing sat in the courtyard of his private residence, smiling as he greeted every guest who had arrived. Today was his 100th birthday. As one of the most important military commanders in the kingdom, his birthday would naturally be filled with guests. He had dedicated his entire life to the kingdom. Ever since he had awakened his origin energy at the age of 15, he had fought bravely on the front lines between the kingdom and the enemy countries. He had slowly risen from a reserve soldier to a general who commanded 3 armies. Not only was he loved by the kingdom's citizens, but he was also highly regarded by the 2 emperors. If there was a flaw in his life, It would be that during the martial arts symposium that the kingdom had held 7 years ago, he had been defeated by Yu Xingyang, a young expert from the Devil Country, who had used a formless divine blade to defeat him in a single blow. Of course, the outcome of that martial arts symposium was also unexpected. On the kingdom's side, an ordinary soldier who called himself Big Brother had used the same method to defeat Yu Xingyang, leaving the title of strongest king in the kingdom. However, the title of strongest blade under the heavens had been bestowed upon a peasant girl called Ding Wenhe by the king. After the martial arts symposium, that Big Brother and Ding Wenhe had left the kingdom's capital and disappeared without a trace. 5 years passed quickly, and the kingdom welcomed a new martial arts symposium. This time, Tianqing did not disappoint the king. He defeated many experts in one fell swoop, including Yu Xingyang from the extraterritorial Devil Nation, and became the new strongest king. At this point, Tianqing's reputation had reached its peak, and he no longer had any regrets in his life of military service. The kingdom had also been peaceful for many years, so Tianqing began to think of retreating. He no longer participated in military affairs and asked to resign from his position as a general. The king could understand him. An Origin Energy general who had dedicated his entire life to the kingdom would naturally spend more time with his family and enjoy the rest of his life. Tianqing's wife was the daughter of the military supply supervisor of the kingdom. She was younger than him by a full 30 years, and he had saved her from the hands of an enemy general when he was fighting a bloody battle on the front lines. He had no time to care about other things, and his wife had waited for him in the capital for many years, only marrying him when he returned to the city on a military mission. After marriage, his wife gave birth to 3 sons. The eldest son had inherited his personality, and he had loved martial arts from a young age and was passionate about cultivation. Just like him, he had enlisted in the army at the age of 10 and fought for the kingdom. Unfortunately, his eldest son did not live past the age of 20. During a riot, his eldest son died under the blades of the rebel army. The second son was the complete opposite of the eldest son. He loved to travel around, recite poems, and write couplets. To a military family like Azure Sky, this was a typical example of idling around and not doing proper work. When the second son was 18 years old, he actually eloped with a peasant girl at the border and ran away to the Devil Kingdom. From then on, there was no news of him. The fate of the first 2 sons was a wake-up call for Tianqing and his wife. Their youngest son, Tianyi, could not follow in the footsteps of his 2 older brothers. His youngest son, Tianyi, was already in his 30s and had been spoiled by his wife since he was young. Now, he was drinking himself into a stupor with his classmates and friends who had come to offer their blessings. He was also dancing around the bonfire with a group of dancers from the royal dance troupe. There was no trace of the valiant and tough image of the Tian family at all. If one were to say that this was Tianqing's son, Tianyi, those that didn't know him would probably not believe it. However, Tianqing could not be bothered to care about this. There were too many guests for his 100th birthday banquet, and there were too many people who needed to be treated with respect. First, there were his old subordinates. Then there were the heroes of the various regions, and then there were the nobles and sects of the kingdom. Everyone who had come was a reputable figure. Even his old rival, Yu Xingyang, had come all the way from the Devil Country to congratulate him. Everyone gathered together, drinking and chatting merrily. It was truly a joyous occasion. At this moment, the banquet in the courtyard was also halfway through. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 types of dishes, the dancers in the distant waterside pavilion were singing and dancing, celebrating the birthday banquet. A bonfire was lit on the lawn by the lake, and the fireworks bloomed in the snowy night sky, forming a colorful and gorgeous line of words. Congratulations to great General Tianqing for having both good fortune and a long life of 100 years. Seeing the bright fireworks, many people cheered. Tianqing's face was also flushed red, and it was obvious that he was very pleased. Only one person did not cheer. His expression was always calm and indifferent. This person was Yu Xingyang. He was arranged to sit at the main table of the banquet, and it could be said that Tianqing had given him enough face. After all, in the current 5 great nations, there was almost no one who could beat him. Yu Xingyang had never liked such occasions where women sang and danced. He had always been obsessed with saber techniques. The crushing defeat at the martial arts symposium 7 years ago had taught him a painful lesson. Every word and action of that big brother had left a deep impression on him, and it also allowed him to see the new direction of his future cultivation. All these years, he had been searching for Big Brother, but it was a pity that he could not find him. Therefore, in the past 2 years, he had come to the kingdom to look for Miss Ding Wenhe. Unfortunately, he still could not find her. It was as if the two of them had disappeared from the kingdom. Just as he was feeling bored and wanted to go out for a breather, the cheers at the entrance suddenly weakened and were replaced by whispers with lowered heads. Yu Xingyang could not help but be attracted by the commotion at the entrance of the manor. He turned his head and saw a group of guards staggering back, clearly unable to stop the people who had suddenly barged in. This was Tianqing's birthday banquet, and there were actually people outside who dared to barge in. He wondered who they were. Yu Xingyang quickly saw clearly. At this moment, he could not help but be surprised because there were 2 people, a boy and a girl. They looked relatively young, about 20 years old. The young man was not tall, and his face was still a little immature, but his complexion was very pale. He was holding a long black sickle in his hand. This kind of sickle could be seen everywhere on a market, and it could not be more common. Behind him was a girl. The girl's facial features were regular, and her face was beautiful, but she looked very haggard. The two of them had one thing in common. Their clothes were tattered, and the style was clearly that of a villager's. Moreover, they were covered in dirt and stains, so they must have traveled a long way to get here. Fortunately, Tianqing's manor was located in the suburbs with beautiful mountains and clear waters. If this was the capital, these 2 country bumpkins would not even be able to enter the city, let alone enter. Everyone present looked at the boy and girl with strange gazes. Yu Xingyang was no exception, because the boy didn't say anything after he came in. He just kept making strange gestures to the girl, and the girl just nodded silently. This was a sign language that only deaf mutes would use, and Yu Xingyang also knew sign language. He could tell that the boy was telling the girl, "This is the place, we are here. This is Great General Tian's private residence." However, when they really arrived at this place, the girl saw the magnificent and opulent scene in the manor and clearly understood what kind of day it was. The girl suddenly became afraid and pulled the boy's sleeve, hiding behind him as if begging, "Let's go." The boy seemed to be comforting her. "Don't be afraid. Great General Tian has fought for the country all his life, and military orders are like mountains. He is the most clear about rewards and punishments, and will definitely uphold justice for you." The courtyard quickly quieted down, and only the crackling of the bonfire could be heard. The light from the fire shone over, illuminating the boy's handsome face. "Excuse me, is Great General Tian here?" The boy's voice was a little soft, and there was a slight tremor. How could a country bumpkin experience such an occasion that only the nobles would enjoy? How could he not have stage fright? The one who answered him was not Tianqing, but a boorish male voice that sounded like a clap of thunder. Where did this little bastard come from? Running over to Elder Ye's 100th birthday banquet to cause trouble? What qualifications do you have to speak to the old man? Get out! As the voice rang out, a figure leapt up from the banquet, brandishing a single palm into a shield. This was clearly the effect of origin energy, and the attacker did not intend to be ruthless. After all, this was Tianqing's birthday banquet, and it was enough to send the boy out. The boy did not panic, and the sickle in his hand pulled back. There was nothing special about this pull, but Yu Xingyang's eyes immediately lit up. This was because the opponent seemed to have sent his palm to the edge of the boy's blade, and if he did not pull back in time, he would definitely hurt himself. Not only was the move ingenious, the timing of the pullback was also very accurate. Sure enough, the attacker clearly did not expect this situation. Perhaps it was because he pulled back too quickly, or because he had drunk too much wine, but when he pulled back, his hands and feet were in a mess, and his back crashed into a table and rolled up and down. Fortunately, the person beside him caught him. Originally, there were still people who were cheering for him, but now they could not help but laugh. Yu Xingyang's eyes lit up even more. He actually recognized the attacker. It was Tianqing's old subordinate, Zhang Yi, a beginner warrior. His strength was not that great, but his reputation was not small. The problem was that he was forced to retreat by a 20-year-old origin ability user. Who was this boy? What was he doing here? Yu Xingyang suddenly had a strong interest in him. However, Tianqing frowned. He was not angry, but was trying hard to recall. Whose family was this kid from? Among the group of nobles in the royal family, there did not seem to be such a person. As soon as Zhang Yi was forced to retreat, another person beside him stood up. This person was called Zhang Long, and he was also relatively young. He also wore a military uniform and was obviously a member of the military. However, he did not dare to use force, as the strength displayed by this boy was not weak. Although most of the people present today were battle elders and battle masters, they could not make a move against such a country bumpkin. That would be beneath their status. Moreover, if a battle elder made a move against an origin ability user, their reputation would be ruined. Thus, to solve the problem for the old man, it was best to let the younger generation step forward. Zhang Long opened his mouth and said, "This little brother, today is old man Tian's 100th birthday. With so many heroes gathered at this birthday banquet, it is one thing for you to barge in," and the old man did not care. However, as soon as you came in, you made a move. What is the meaning of this? Are you deliberately causing trouble? Hearing this, Yu Xingyang coldly snorted in disdain. He disliked this kind of person the most. They thought they were very good at speaking, but in reality, they were just distorting right and wrong. Were their eyes on their buttocks? It was clearly them who made the first move, forcing the other party to retaliate. Now, they were being labeled as troublemakers. Looking at the entire kingdom, who would dare to cause trouble at Tianqing's birthday banquet? Even the king of the kingdom would not have the guts. However, Yu Xingyang could not say these words. He was someone from the extraterritorial Devil Kingdom, and his status was also a distinguished guest. Him not saying anything was the greatest support he could give to this boy. Because he was once a poor boy, he could see that this boy had rashly barged in here and even dared to retaliate. There must be a special reason behind this. Of course, what he was most curious about was this boy's shrewd and ruthless blade techniques. Chapter 258. The bonfire was burning brightly, but the snow suddenly became heavier. The snowflakes mixed with the flames swept the young man's face. The young man's expression was somewhat nervous as he replied, "I'm not here to cause trouble." Yu Xingyang sighed slightly. Not only was his words useless, but he was also afraid. After all, he was a young man, so it was normal for him to have such a reaction. Zhang Long scolded, "You injured a group of guards and forced your way in. You even injured the kingdom's soldiers. How is this not causing trouble?" Yu Xingyang couldn't help but cough lightly. "Brother Zhang, this little brother must have his reasons for rushing here on a snowy night. Why don't you listen to what he has to say?" Because of this sentence, the young man immediately gave Yu Xingyang a grateful look. And because it was Yu Xingyang who spoke, Tianqing had to give him some face. He took 2 steps forward and revealed a gentle smile to the young man. "Tianqing is old. The younger generation is full of talents. I didn't expect little brother's sword skills to be so outstanding and your cultivation to be so high. I haven't asked your name yet." The young man didn't dare to be rude. He could only put away his sword and bow slightly. This was a great general who had made great contributions to the kingdom and was respected by all. No matter who faced him, this was a necessary etiquette. After bowing, the young man said, I'm just a nameless soldier. I'm not worthy of being mentioned by great General Tian." Yu Xingyang let out a sigh of relief. This young man still had some brains. He knew that he couldn't say his name. Even if he could get through today, there was no guarantee that others wouldn't find trouble with him in the future. Tianqing smiled understandingly. Little brother must have his own difficulties. That's fine. May I know why little brother has come to my humble abode? The young man turned around and pointed at the young girl. I'm here because of her. The young girl's eyes were swollen, as if she had been crying. Her entire body was soaked, as if she had just been drenched in the rain. Tianqing frowned. Little girl, are you from the capital? This was asking the obvious. How could someone from the capital be dressed so shabbily? The young man took the initiative to explain. She's from a peasant family outside the city. She was born deaf and mute. She can't hear or speak. So that was the case. Everyone now understood why the young man kept gesturing to the young girl. It was because it was sign language. Tianqing asked, Little girl, what's the matter? The young man whispered, This morning, I was hunting in the suburbs. The other hunters shouted that someone had jumped into the river to commit suicide, so we all went into the river to save him. Tianqing understood. You were the one who saved the little girl? The young man nodded. Although his voice was still very soft, the people around him could still hear him clearly. General Tian, I know sign language. After asking around, I found out that there was a caravan that went out of the city last night. When they passed by her house, they saw that she was beautiful and deaf and mute, so they wanted to rape her. She was so sad and angry that she couldn't say anything, so she wanted to kill herself this morning. Luckily, Brother Wen Yuan Liang, a hunter from Lanbao village, found her in time and asked us to save her. The young man's train of thought was clear and organized. He explained the matter clearly in a few words and even pointed out the name of the witness. It meant that this matter was not fake and was not a child's play. In fact, when these words were said, everyone in the manor was moved. In the current criminal law of the kingdom, the punishment for the crime of lust was extremely cruel. As long as one raped a young girl, they would be castrated. After castrating, they would be beaten with a rod and finally beheaded. The head would be hung on the top of the city as a warning to the public. Lust is the most evil. Don't be rash with lust. Tianqing's face darkened. So, the person who raped the little girl is from the caravan that went out of the city? In the past 2 days, there had been countless caravans leaving the city. Most of them were here to deliver birthday gifts to him. Caravans of gifts were transported into the Tian Manor, and the suburbs were the only way to pass through. There was clearly a trace of this matter. The young man finally said something shocking. This person is in this courtyard right now. Everyone looked at each other with different expressions. Some were nervous, some were suspicious, and some were gloating. Who would be so bold to dare to mess around in the capital, disregarding the kingdom's laws? This was great. They had been caught red-handed. This was going to be a big joke. The young man bowed again. I know that General Tian has been fighting for the kingdom for decades. The military law is extremely strict, and you have never practiced favoritism. That is why I brought her here. I hope that General Tian can uphold justice. Tianqing's expression was extremely ugly. Who is this person? The young man took a deep breath, raised his head, and mustered his courage to say, General Tian, he is your son, Tian. There was an earth-shattering rumble, and Tianqing felt as if a bolt of lightning had descended from the sky, shattering all the thoughts he had prepared. He suddenly recalled that the Skywings had indeed made a trip to the city yesterday, and their purpose was to purchase the batch of fireworks that were currently being set off. He ignored the stunned people in the courtyard. His figure blurred for a moment before returning to normal. In the blink of an eye, Tian, who was still drunk by the lake, was dragged over. At the same time, Tianqing released source energy from his palm, and a surge of energy entered Tian Yi's body. Tian immediately sobered up. Tianqing yelled, Listen carefully. Is what this little brother said true? Tian Yi's face turned pale, and he almost jumped up. Nonsense, he's talking nonsense. How could I do such a thing? Nonsense. This is complete nonsense. Seeing him yell, the young girl's expression immediately turned to one of hatred. Although she couldn't hear anything, she wasn't blind. Based on the young girl's reaction, most of the people present knew that this was most likely the doing of this bastard. Tianqing had been on the battlefield for many years, so he had no time to discipline his children. His wife also spoiled his precious son too much. The saying that a loving mother spoils her son was absolutely true. However, Tianyi was also known for his lecherous nature in the capital. He could be found in brothels, taverns, and dance halls. Who would have thought that he wouldn't even let a village girl go? He was extremely shameless. At this moment, however, most people wisely chose to keep their mouths shut. If they opened their mouths, even if they said a single word, it was very likely that they would get into trouble. This trouble was too big, so big that it could take someone's life at any time. This young man was young and ignorant, and he didn't see the world clearly enough. He still thought that he could seek justice. Of course, it wasn't as if there weren't people who spoke up. A deep and powerful voice came from the main table. "Little brother, you keep saying that Tian-Yi did this, but you need to show evidence for everyone to believe you." There is nothing wrong with this statement, but Yu Xingyang frowned because the person who had spoken was right next to him. He also knew this person. It was Bai Pinghai, who had been sent flying by his blade at the martial arts symposium 7 years ago. Bai Pinghai was an outstanding genius among the younger generation of the kingdom. He had a good relationship with Tianqing and was now the chief expert of the Bai clan. Naturally, Tianqing wouldn't misunderstand his words. Bai Pinghai's figure also flashed, and he appeared next to Tianqing in the blink of an eye. He didn't even cause a gust of wind. This level of cultivation was at least at the combat master level. "Young man, illness comes from the mouth. I hope that you won't be bewitched by others and come to old Master Tian's birthday banquet to cause trouble. If you don't have evidence, it's not too late to turn back now. Old Master Tian's illustrious name won't allow anyone with ulterior motives to slander him." Bai Pinghai's expression was very gentle, but this gentleness made the young man feel an inexplicable chill. He was too young and didn't know much about the dangers of this world. He didn't know that the most frightening thing in this world wasn't beasts, but the human heart. Thus, he replied without hesitation, "I have evidence." Bai Pinghai glanced at him. "Where is the evidence?" The young man faced the girl. "She told me that she bit Tian-Yi's shoulder. The mark must still be there." Tian-Yi wasn't an origin energy user. If there really was such a wound, it would be impossible for it to heal in a single day. Thus, Bai Pinghai struck out like lightning, pressing down on Heaven's Wing's shoulders with a pa sound and tearing open his clothes with a chi sound. Heaven's Wing's shoulders were spotlessly white, and there were no bite marks. This time, everyone was stunned, and they all looked at the young man suspiciously. Yu Xingyang's eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. Although there were many experts present, only he, Tianqing, and this Bai Pinghai could truly rank in the top 3. Thus, while it was normal for others not to be able to see through it, there was no way they could hide it from his eyes. It turned out that when Bai Pinghai had pressed down on Tianyi's shoulders, he had already secretly channeled 2 masses of pure energy into Tianyi's shoulders. Bai Pinghai was an origin energy user who cultivated both origin energy and origin energy at the speed of light, and he had cultivated a self-healing origin energy. In addition, his technique was extremely fast and stealthy, so the fact that he could instantly heal a wound was definitely enough to fool most people present. As for this young man, he couldn't even clearly see how Bai Pinghai had flashed down from the banquet, so there was no need to even mention what technique he had used. Bai Pinghai coldly looked at the young man. "I've already said that if you don't have evidence, it's still not too late to turn back. Right now, you'd best tell the truth about the mastermind behind you. Today is a day of great luck. Seeing that you're young and ignorant, I, Bai Pinghai, can plead for leniency on your behalf with the old man and have him deal with you leniently." Snowflakes drifted down in the manor, and the surrounding air was so quiet that it was about to explode. Unexpectedly, the young man's expression didn't change in the slightest. Instead, it was terrifyingly calm. She also said that at the base of Tianyi's thigh, there's a dark red triangular birthmark. With these words, the situation reversed once more. Over 100 suspicious gazes turned back and swept over Tianyi's body. The killing intent in Yu Xingyang's eyes also disappeared, replaced by a bright light. The young man was calmer and smarter than he had imagined. If a person's birthmark grew on a special part of the human body, it was naturally impossible for it to be exposed in public. It was also unlikely for outsiders to know about it. This proved that the young girl's words weren't false. But Ping Hai's expression didn't change. Since that's the case, then I'll invite a few seniors from the famous clans to come together with Tion Yi to examine the body indoors to see if what you said is true. The young man decisively said, "No. If you want to examine it, you have to do it here." He didn't know why, but when he heard the word "no" come from the young man's mouth, Yu Xingyang's blood instantly boiled. He had always been calm and indifferent, and he didn't know how many years it had been since this kind of long-lost feeling had appeared on his body. He didn't know if he would have the courage to say no in front of so many nobles and heroes if he were in this young man's shoes. A high-level origin ability user actually dared to raise doubts in front of so many war sovereigns and war masters in order to seek justice for a peasant girl. A surge of heroism welled up, and Yu Xingyang couldn't help but use his origin energy to speak. What he said makes sense. We should examine it in front of everyone. If we go indoors, the results of the examination might not necessarily be the truth. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.